Beneath the endless white, there is silence, a silence so deep it feels eternal, a frozen shroud stretching across a continent larger than Europe. For most, Antarctica is nothing but ice and emptiness, a wasteland at the edge of the world. But what if the ice is not only a prison, but a veil? What if, buried under miles of frozen weight, lies the memory of a world we have forgotten? Some scientists whisper of strange anomalies hidden below, mountains sharper than they should be, lakes sealed away for millions of years, shadows that look like pyramids carved not by nature but by intention, and old maps, centuries before Antarctica was discovered, that somehow sketch a coastline we should not have known. Tonight, let us drift beneath the ice. Let us follow the whispers of radar, the tremors of hidden mountains, the ghosts sealed in black water, and ask the question no one dares to put into words. Could Antarctica be the resting place of a lost empire, frozen, waiting, watching, until the ice itself decides to reveal its truth? The world we know is shaped by memory. But memory is fragile, easily erased by fire, by flood, or by ice. Far to the south, beyond the restless seas and the howling winds, Antarctica waits, a silent cathedral of ice, stretching higher than the tallest skyscrapers, thicker than any glacier on Earth. To most of us, it is nothing more than a blank spot at the bottom of the globe, an empty white sheet on the map, remote, lifeless, eternal. Yet the truth is stranger. Antarctica is not empty. It is not silent. Beneath its frozen skin lies a hidden world, sealed away for millions of years, a world we're only just beginning to glimpse. Scientists have long known that ice can conceal. Beneath Greenland's ice sheet, radar has uncovered valleys, mountains, and ancient river systems. But Antarctica is on another scale entirely. The ice here is not measured in meters, but in miles. In some places, the frozen crust is more than 4 kilometers thick, pressing down upon the land below with unimaginable weight. And yet beneath all that pressure, life still stirs. The first hints came not from explorers on the ground, but from instruments in the sky. Satellites peering down with radar, bouncing invisible signals into the ice, began to detect strange reflections. Smooth, flat surfaces buried deep below. These were not rocks, they were lakes. More than 400 of them, hidden under the frozen mantle. Vast reservoirs of liquid water, locked away not by temperature but by pressure, warmed faintly by the heat of Earth's interior. Together, they form an unseen network of rivers and lakes, some the size of entire countries. It is a world in darkness, untouched by sun or sky, and yet it is alive. Take Lake Vostok, for instance, a body of water so immense it could swallow all of Connecticut. For at least 15 million years it has been sealed off beneath the ice, cut away from the atmosphere, its waters pressurized and isolated in a pocket of time. When Russian scientists drilled into its edge in 2012, they found not emptiness, but traces of life, microbes, strange organisms adapted to extremes, things that had waited in silence for eons. But the story does not end with microbes. Around the same time, seismic and magnetic readings revealed something odd near Lake Vostok, a disturbance, an anomaly, a signal that did not belong. To some, it was simply the mark of unusual geology. To others, it hinted at something far stranger, the possibility that the ice was hiding not only water, but structures, perhaps even the fingerprints of intelligence. Further across the continent, the mysteries deepen. In East Antarctica lies a region called Wilkes Land, where satellite gravity maps have revealed a circular depression more than 200 miles across. To geologists, it might be the scar of an ancient asteroid strike, a cataclysm from Earth's deep past. But to the curious, it suggests something more deliberate, a buried dome, an unnatural mass hidden by time and ice. And then, the mountains. Few realize that Antarctica hides a mountain range as vast as the Alps, the Gamburtsev Mountains, discovered by chance in the 1950s, entire peaks, sharp and jagged, somehow preserved beneath the ice for tens of millions of years. Scientists puzzle over how such sharpness could endure. Erosion should have worn them smooth long ago. To the human imagination, the answer seems almost inevitable. Perhaps they were shielded, protected, kept in perfect form because they were meant to be preserved. The deeper we look, the stranger it becomes. And yet, even with all these discoveries, we know almost nothing. Only a fraction of Antarctica's subglacial world has been mapped. Each new survey, each mission, reveals features we never expected. Hidden valleys, sunken rivers, entire basins that suggest the continent is not as static as we once believed. Some theories go even further. They remind us that Antarctica was not always frozen. During the Cretaceous, around 90 million years ago, the land near the South Pole was warm enough to support temperate rainforests. Fossilized roots, pollen, and spores have been recovered, evidence that this land once thrived with life. Imagine rivers winding through forests of ferns and conifers, birds calling in the canopy, the air heavy with rain. Antarctica was green. Antarctica was alive. Even in the more recent past, within the last 100,000 years, parts of the continent may have been ice-free. Some argue that sudden shifts in climate, or even the radical idea of Earth's crust shifting, might have repositioned Antarctica, allowing it brief windows of warmth before the ice returned. If that were true, could human beings, or something like them, have lived there? It is here that science meets speculation. Some explorers point to curious images, pyramid-like peaks seen in satellite photos, their sides unnaturally straight. Are they simply mountains shaped by wind and ice? Or are they monuments from a civilization that predated our memory? Others look at ancient maps, the most famous being the Piri Reis Map of 1513, which seems to show Antarctica's coastline centuries before its official discovery. Scholars dismiss this as distortion, a misinterpretation of South America. But the legend lingers. How could a 16th century mapmaker have drawn a land hidden beneath the ice? Each of these mysteries pulls us deeper into the frozen continent's spell, and each adds to the same haunting question. What if Antarctica is not simply the end of the world, but the beginning of another story? A story of civilizations erased, not by conquest or decay, but by ice. A story that could upend everything we think we know about human history. And so, the ice becomes a mirror. Scientists see geology, tectonics, and climate locked in its depths. Dreamers see lost empires, temples, and forgotten maps. Both gaze at the same ice, and both know that the truth, whatever it may be, remains buried for now. But here is the urgency. The ice is melting. Slowly, year by year, Antarctica gives up fragments of its secrets. Glaciers retreat, hidden valleys appear, new lakes shift beneath the surface. We are living at the edge of revelation. Perhaps in the years to come, satellites will peel away the last mysteries. Perhaps a drilling team with careful hands will break into a chamber untouched for millions of years. Perhaps something will be found, something that proves we were not the first, that history is older and stranger than we ever imagined. For now, all we can do is wait and listen to the silence of the ice, because silence is never empty. It is only a story waiting to be told. Imagine standing on the high plateau of East Antarctica. Here the horizon is not broken by mountains or trees, but by endless whiteness. Snow stretches so far that it bends with the curvature of the earth, disappearing into the glare of the sun. The air is thin, dry and brittle. It stings the skin like knives of glass. This is one of the coldest, harshest places on the planet, where winter temperatures plunge below -80 degrees Celsius. And yet, beneath this desolation, beneath nearly 4 kilometers of solid ice lies something unexpected. A lake. Not a frozen pond, not a buried trickle of water, but a vast inland sea sealed off from the world for at least 15 million years. Lake Vostok, one of the largest freshwater lakes on Earth, hidden in perfect darkness, its waters untouched by the sky. It stretches for more than 250 kilometers in length, about 50 kilometers across, and in places it plunges more than 800 meters deep. By volume, it rivals Lake Ontario. But unlike any other lake on Earth, it has been entombed under a crushing ceiling of ice for epochs. How can such a thing exist? The answer lies in pressure and heat. The ice above acts like a lid, pressing down with unimaginable force. Beneath, geothermal warmth seeps upward from Earth's crust. Together, they create a fragile balance, keeping the waters liquid even in this kingdom of cold. It is, in a sense, a time capsule, a self-contained world, locked away since long before humankind learned to walk upright. For decades, Lake Vostok was a rumour. Its existence was first hinted at in the 1970s, when airborne radar surveys detected strange reflections beneath the ice. In the 1990s, more sophisticated mapping confirmed it, a body of water larger than anything scientists had expected. It was not just one lake, but part of a network, a hidden circulation system of rivers and reservoirs flowing beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. Lake Vostok, however, stood apart. Its size, its isolation, and its depth made it something unique, a mystery waiting in the dark. And mysteries draw attention. In 1996, British and Russian researchers discovered something that added fuel to speculation: a magnetic anomaly on the lake's eastern shore. Instruments designed to measure the natural magnetism of Earth's crust registered an unexpected disturbance, as if something dense, metallic, or structured lay hidden beneath. The scientific explanations were cautious. Perhaps it was a concentration of minerals or a quirk of local geology. But outside the halls of academia, imaginations leapt further. Could this be the buried remnant of a meteorite impact? Or even, as the more adventurous proposed, the trace of something artificial, something made long before humans had any memory of Antarctica? The truth remained hidden beneath kilometers of ice. Still, the lure of the unknown was too strong. In 1998, Russian scientists at the nearby Vostok station began the long and dangerous process of drilling down into the lake. The work was painstaking. Each meter of progress risked contaminating the pristine environment below. For more than a decade, the team inched closer, driven by the promise of discovery. Finally, in February of 2012, they broke through. For the first time in millions of years, water from Lake Vostok rose up through the borehole, freezing instantly as it touched the air. Samples were collected, analysed, debated, and what they found was extraordinary. The water contained traces of microbial life, DNA fragments, chemical signatures, organisms that seemed adapted to extreme environments. To some, it was proof that even in the most hostile conditions, life finds a way. To others, it raised more troubling questions. Could these organisms truly be native to the lake, or had they been introduced during drilling? Contamination haunted every result, yet the possibility lingered. If life exists in Lake Vostok, sealed off for millions of years, what forms might it have taken? Could entire ecosystems have evolved there in isolation, parallel worlds, following evolutionary paths unlike anything we know? Some researchers even suggested that studying Vostok might be a rehearsal for searching for life on icy moons like Europa or Enceladus. Just as Lake Vostok lies beneath a crust of ice, so too do those moons hide oceans beneath frozen shells. Antarctica, in this sense, becomes a mirror of the cosmos. But for storytellers, Lake Vostok invites an even darker question. What if its isolation preserved not only microbes but memories? Could structures, artifacts, or evidence of something ancient, perhaps even human, still rest along its shores? The magnetic anomaly whispers this possibility. A dense mass, unexplained, hiding beneath ice and water. To scientists it is a puzzle, to dreamers it is a doorway. Some theories drift into the realm of lost civilizations. They imagine that, before the ice came, Antarctica was home to a people both advanced and forgotten, builders who left their mark only to be sealed away by a sudden freeze. Vostok, in this vision, becomes their tomb, a silent witness to a story erased from history. Of course, no evidence exists to confirm this. The scientific consensus holds firmly to geology, to natural processes, to the slow, patient forces of Earth. Yet even within science, there is awe. Because regardless of speculation, Lake Vostok is still a miracle, a hidden sea beneath the ice, proof that Earth holds secrets deeper than we ever imagined. And this is only the beginning. Lake Vostok is not alone. Dozens of other lakes have been discovered across Antarctica, each with its own mysteries. Some, like Lake Whillans and Lake Mercer, lie closer to the surface, connected by rivers that pulse and flow beneath the ice. In 2019, scientists drilling into Lake Mercer found not only microbes, but traces of larger organisms, the remains of crustaceans and even tiny worms preserved in sediments beneath the ice. Whether these were living creatures or ancient remnants washed in long ago remains unclear. But their presence suggests that subglacial Antarctica may not be sterile at all. It may be teeming with life, and where there is life, there is always the possibility of more. The story of Lake Vostok reminds us of two truths. The first, that Earth still holds frontiers of mystery, places as alien as the planets above us, right here on our own world. The second, that human imagination, when faced with the unknown, will always leap beyond the data into the realms of myth, memory, and speculation. In the silence of Lake Vostok we see both. The careful hand of science, tracing microbes in frozen water, and the restless heart of legend, whispering of civilization swallowed by ice. Which voice is louder depends on who is listening. But either way, Lake Vostok stands as a reminder. The world beneath Antarctica is not dead. It is hidden. And what is hidden has power. The power to change what we know, the power to ignite wonder, and perhaps even the power to rewrite history. As we move deeper into Antarctica's frozen mysteries, the question sharpens. If Lake Vostok can harbour life, anomalies, and whispers of the unknown, what else lies beneath the continent's icy veil? For now, the silent heart of Antarctica beats unseen, its secrets locked away. But the ice is thinning. The world is watching. And one day, perhaps sooner than we think, Lake Vostok may no longer be silent. Darkness is not the absence of life. Sometimes it is where life hides. If Lake Vostok is Antarctica's silent heart, then Lake Mercer and Lake Whillans are its pulse. Smaller, shallower, yet more accessible, closer to the surface, whispering hints of what may thrive beneath the ice. They do not slumber in perfect isolation like Vostok. Instead, they connect to the hidden rivers and shifting waters that weave beneath the ice sheet, exchanging water with the ocean in slow, secret rhythms. It was here in these lakes that scientists would uncover something astonishing. Evidence that the Antarctic darkness is not empty. The discovery of Lake Whillans. Lake Whillans lies under about 800 metres of ice near the Ross Ice Shelf. For decades it was suspected but unconfirmed, a faint anomaly detected by radar, a flat patch in the data. Then, in 2007, scientists tracked subtle rises and falls of the ice surface above it, like a chest rising and falling in sleep. The movement suggested that the lake was filling and draining on a cycle, releasing its waters into subglacial rivers and eventually into the sea. This meant that Lake Whillans was not a stagnant pool but part of a living system, a hidden circulation beneath the frozen desert. In 2013, an ambitious project known as WISA drilled down into Lake Whillans. Unlike earlier efforts, this team used sterile, hot water drilling, carefully filtering and treating every drop to prevent contamination. After days of relentless work, they broke through, and water from the lake was brought up to the surface. What they found astonished the world. The water contained thousands of microbial cells per milliliter, an entire microbial ecosystem thriving in perpetual darkness. These organisms fed not on sunlight, but on chemistry, iron, sulfur, nitrogen, compounds leached from rocks below, or carried in by ancient currents. Some metabolized minerals from the earth itself, others recycled nutrients in delicate chains of survival. For the first time, humanity had proof. Beneath Antarctica's ice, life could persist in isolation, in places where the sun has not shone for millions of years. It was as though a light had been switched on in our understanding. Suddenly, the subglacial world was no longer just geological. It was biological. It was alive, like Mercer and the Salsa expedition. But the revelations did not end with Whillans. A few hundred kilometres away lies Lake Mercer, another subglacial reservoir beneath more than a kilometre of ice. In 2019, the Salsa project, Subglacial Antarctic Lakes Scientific Access, reached its waters after years of planning. The mission drilled carefully, again using sterile techniques, and extracted not only water but also sediments from the lake bed. Inside those samples were surprises. Researchers discovered traces of microbial DNA, echoing the findings from Whillans. But even more extraordinary, they uncovered the remains of tiny animals, the shells of diatoms, the remnants of crustaceans, even fragments of worms. These were not alive, but their presence suggested that at some point in the past, life larger than microbes had inhabited the waters of Mercer. Where had they come from? Some argued that these remains were ancient, washed into the lake thousands of years ago when ice retreated and seawater flooded inland. Others believed they might represent a still-living ecosystem, connected through unseen channels to the ocean beyond. Either way, the discovery shook assumptions. Antarctica's subglacial lakes were not sterile voids. They were reservoirs of memory, holding not only chemical traces of life, but the physical remains of creatures that once swam, crawled, and fed in the darkness. Rivers beneath the ice. The more scientists looked, the more they realized. Antarctica is not static. It is not frozen solid like glass. It breathes. Water flows beneath the ice sheet in ways that resemble the veins of a hidden continent. Lakes fill and drain, sending floods through channels unseen. Rivers move silently, lubricating glaciers, carrying sediments, transporting nutrients. Some of this water eventually spills into the Southern Ocean, linking the hidden world to the open seas. This means that what lies beneath is not isolated. It communicates, however slowly, with the outside world, and that changes everything. If microbes can persist in such conditions, then nutrients and oxygen may circulate just enough to sustain more complex forms of life. Perhaps small crustaceans, perhaps fish adapted to perpetual night, perhaps things we cannot even imagine. In this sense, Antarctica's underworld becomes not just a scientific curiosity, but a mirror for cosmic questions. For if life can endure here, without sunlight, sealed beneath ice, why not also on Europa, on Enceladus, on the frozen moons of Jupiter and Saturn? Lake Wilkes and Lake Mercer become rehearsal stages, teaching us how to search for life beyond Earth. Life without sunlight, the organisms discovered beneath the ice survive without photosynthesis. Instead of sunlight, they rely on chemical energy, chemosynthesis. This is the same principle that sustains ecosystems around deep-sea hydrothermal vents, where life thrives in the absence of light, feeding on minerals erupting from the seafloor. To think of life beneath Antarctica is to realize how adaptable life truly is. It does not require warmth or sun or air as we know it. It requires only the raw ingredients, water, energy, chemistry, and suddenly the universe seems less empty. But for storytellers, there is another layer. If simple life can endure in the dark, what else might endure? Could the remnants of human-like cultures preserved in sudden ice also survive? Could structures, artifacts, or messages remain, hidden within sediments waiting for the melt to reveal them? The line between science and speculation blurs. One whispers of microbes, the other of monuments. Both are nourished by the same truth. The ice conceals more than we yet understand. The shadow of contamination. Yet every discovery comes with caution. The drilling of Lake Vostok raised fears of contamination, that by piercing the ice humans might introduce foreign microbes, forever altering an ecosystem that has been isolated for millions of years. These concerns remain just as real for Mercer and Wilkes. Each project must walk a delicate line, to explore but not to destroy, to see but not to blind, to listen but not to drown out the voices already there. It is an ethical challenge, as profound as any technological one, because the deeper we reach into Antarctica, the more we risk losing the very purity that makes it valuable. Whispers of something more, and yet the findings stir the imagination. Microbes are proof of persistence. Worm fragments are proof of memory. Together, they form a whisper. This world is not dead. To scientists, this is a treasure, a glimpse into Earth's resilience, a model for extraterrestrial life. But to those who peer at Antarctica through the lens of mystery, it is something else. It is a confirmation that the ice is not an empty grave, but a vault. And in vaults, things are stored. Artifacts, stories, perhaps even empires. Of course, such visions remain unproven, yet they cling stubbornly to the edges of the debate, feeding books, documentaries, and late-night conversations. Because when faced with the unknown, humans reach for myth as readily as for data. The unfinished story. Lake Wilkes and Lake Mercer have given us a glimpse of life in the dark, but only a glimpse. Hundreds of other lakes remain untouched, each a potential world of its own. Some are larger, some are deeper, some are more isolated. What might be waiting in those unseen waters? What organisms? What sediments? What strange chemistries? And what if one day the ice above cracks, not by human drill, but by nature itself, revealing to the world a secret sealed for millions of years? The truth is that we are only at the threshold. Every answer brings more questions. Every discovery deepens the mystery. And in this mystery lies the allure. Antarctica reminds us that Earth is not yet fully known. It is not a solved puzzle. It is a living riddle, hiding some of its most profound chapters beneath silence and ice. In Lake Wilkes and Lake Mercer, we see the first sentences of those hidden chapters, but the story remains unfinished, and until it is told, the imagination will continue to wander, asking, what if? Thus, life in the dark is no longer a speculation, it is real. The question is not whether life exists beneath the ice, but how much, and what kind. And with that question, the whispers grow louder. If microbes, if crustaceans, if worms can endure, then perhaps other memories, older and stranger, endure as well. The ice is thick, the darkness is deep, but it is not empty. It is alive. The ice remembers. Though it is silent, though it does not speak, It carries within it the echoes of ancient wounds, scars left upon the earth long before humankind could walk or dream. One such scar lies hidden in a remote, frozen province of East Antarctica known as Wilkes Land. To the eye, there is nothing unusual there, a blank sweep of white, undisturbed by mountains or valleys. But beneath the ice, instruments have revealed something that has haunted geologists, explorers and dreamers alike. It is called the Wilkes Land anomaly, the first signs. In 2006, satellites scanning the Earth's gravity field, the way mass beneath the surface tugs ever so slightly at orbiting instruments, detected something strange. Beneath the ice of Wilkes Land, more than 250 miles across, lay a massive mass concentration, or mascon. To scientists, it appeared as a circular depression in the crust, hidden beneath miles of frozen cover. Its scale was staggering, a structure more than twice the size of the state of Ohio. The anomaly was so large, so round, that some researchers suggested it might represent the remnants of an ancient impact, the kind of asteroid strike that could have changed the history of life on Earth. Others disagreed. Perhaps it was a density contrast in the mantle, a quirk of the way Earth's interior shifted and cooled. Perhaps it was nothing unusual at all, only a trick of gravity maps and data smoothing. But the shape, the symmetry, it refused to let go of the imagination. An asteroid's shadow. If the Wilkes Land anomaly is indeed an impact crater, it would rank among the largest ever discovered. Some have suggested it could be linked to the Permian-Triassic extinction around 250 million years ago, when over 90% of marine life and 70% of land life vanished in what scientists call the Great Dying. The possibility is staggering. Could this hidden crater buried under Antarctic ice be the fingerprint of Earth's most devastating extinction? If so, then Antarctica is not merely a frozen wilderness, but the tomb of a cataclysm that reshaped life itself. And yet certainty remains elusive. No core samples have been taken. No drill has pierced the ice to reach the bedrock below. We are left with shadows on maps, hints of density, patterns too vast to touch. Circles within circles. To the human mind, circles are never innocent. We see them as symbols, as markers of intent. When satellites draw a circle beneath the ice, we do not think of geology alone. We think of architecture, of design, of the possibility that the circle is not an accident of rock but the remnant of a structure. Vast, deliberate, and ancient. This is where the Wilkes Land anomaly drifts into legend. Some propose that beneath the ice lies not a crater, but the ruins of a city, or perhaps a base, left behind in an epoch we have forgotten. Stories bloom, of pyramids beneath the glaciers, of tunnels carved through bedrock, of technologies sealed away since an age before the ice. None of these claims carry the weight of evidence. They exist in the realm of speculation, of late-night whispers. Yet they cling to the anomaly like frost to a window, shaping how we perceive it. A hidden basin. Even within sober science, the anomaly remains puzzling. The depression does not align neatly with known tectonic events. Its depth suggests a violent history, yet no clear uplift ring. The raised rim, typical of confirmed craters, has been mapped. Some argue it may be a buried rift basin, a tear in Earth's crust that filled with denser material. Others wonder whether volcanic intrusions could explain the signature. But none of these explanations fully dissolve the mystery. The anomaly persists, a vast circle, waiting, daring us to interpret. The ice is a vault. Imagine, for a moment, what might be preserved beneath. If an impact truly occurred there, it would have shattered continents, unleashed tsunamis, and darkened the skies. But in Antarctica, unlike other parts of the world, the relentless ice could have acted as a vault. Debris, shocked minerals, perhaps even fossils or sediments recording the catastrophe. All of it may still lie undisturbed, locked in darkness. If drilling ever reaches those depths, the findings could rewrite not only our history of Antarctica, but of life itself. Between science and speculation. Yet even as science circles the anomaly with cautious curiosity, speculation leaps further. Some suggest that the mascon is too perfect, too symmetrical to be natural. They whisper of structures on a scale we cannot fathom, fortresses or domes, remnants of an advanced civilization swallowed by sudden ice. Others link it to the legends of Atlantis, suggesting that the mythical lost continent might not have sunk into the sea, but into ice. Again, the evidence for such claims is absent. What exists are patterns on gravity maps, ambiguous and open to interpretation, and yet, mystery feeds imagination. The anomaly's very silence gives it power, a symbol of the unknown. Whether crater, rift, or myth, the Wilkes Land anomaly symbolizes something larger. It reminds us that beneath Antarctica's ice we are blind, that a continent the size of Europe still hides its bones, its valleys, its scars, that we have mapped Mars in greater detail than the land beneath our own South Pole. In that blindness, wonder thrives. Every anomaly becomes a canvas. Every unexplained shape becomes a story. Echoes of catastrophe. Let us linger on the thought of catastrophe. If the Wilkes Land structure is an impact crater, then it may be the remnant of an event so violent that it nearly ended life on Earth. Picture it. A fireball hundreds of kilometers wide tearing through the sky, striking with the force of billions of nuclear weapons, oceans boiling, forests burning, skies darkened by ash, and then silence, followed by the slow, painful recovery of life. Perhaps the reason Antarctica is a wasteland today lies not only in its latitude, but in that ancient wound. Perhaps it has been carrying the memory of death longer than we know, an invitation. The Wilkes Land anomaly is in the end an invitation. It beckons us to look deeper, to send instruments and drills, to pierce the ice and uncover the truth. But it also warns us. Because whatever we find, whether asteroid or architecture, will change how we see the world. If it is a crater, then we must confront the fragility of life, the fact that existence can be erased in a single cosmic instant. If it is something more, something made, then we must face an even greater reckoning, that we are not the first, that history stretches further back than we ever imagined, waiting beneath. For now, Wilkes Land remains quiet. The ice stretches endlessly, the winds sweep across its surface, and the anomaly waits below, unyielding, unresolved. To the scientist, it is a puzzle. To the dreamer, it is a legend. To the storyteller, it is a scar, not only upon the earth, but upon our imagination, because every scar tells a story, and this one is still hidden. The ice remembers, and perhaps one day it will reveal what it has kept. Beneath the endless white lies a secret spine of stone, a mountain chain so vast, so sharp, so improbable, that for decades it seemed more myth than fact. These are the Gamburtsev Mountains, sometimes called the Ghost Mountains, a hidden kingdom entombed beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet. We walk the earth believing that mountains are among its most permanent features, weathered slowly over eons, crumbling gradually into plains. But the Gamburtsev Range defies this story. Sharp, jagged, alpine, preserved in icy perfection, though they should have been ground to dust by the passing of millions of years. The first whisper. The Gamburtsev Mountains were not discovered by explorers on foot. No climber has ever touched their peaks. No photograph captures their ridges. Instead, they were revealed in 1958 during the International Geophysical Year, when Soviet scientists crossed East Antarctica on seismic surveys. Beneath their instruments, the earth trembled oddly, sending back echoes that hinted at something unexpected. At first, it was difficult to believe. A mountain range hidden under thousands of meters of ice? Yet the data was consistent. Reflections suggested peaks rising more than 3,000 meters, valleys plunging deep, a chain nearly 1,200 kilometers long, about the size of the European Alps. But unlike the Alps, the Gamburtsev Range had never been seen by human eyes. It was a mountain chain without a sky. An impossible youth. Here lies the puzzle. By geological logic, mountains erode over time. Wind, water, and gravity grind their peaks, soften their edges, reduce them to rounded hills. The Alps are young, only tens of millions of years old, and still their peaks show signs of wear. The Himalayas, younger still, are sharp because they are freshly lifted by tectonic forces. But the Gamburtsev Range? They are believed to have first risen more than 1 billion years ago. By rights, they should have been worn flat long before Antarctica froze. And yet seismic surveys show peaks that are sharp and alpine, valleys that are deep and rugged, as if the mountains were carved yesterday. It is as though time itself paused beneath the ice. How can this be? Scientists have struggled to explain the Gamburtsev paradox. Some suggest that the range formed in stages, first as ancient mountains 1 billion years ago, then rejuvenated by tectonic collisions hundreds of millions of years later, rising anew in an echo of their first birth. Still, why the sharpness remains is unclear. Others argue that the ice itself is the answer. For tens of millions of years, Antarctica's ice sheet has acted as a shield, preserving the landscape beneath from erosion. No rivers to wear them down, no rain, no wind. Just the cold, still weight of ice, locking the mountains in eternal stasis. It is a plausible solution, and yet it leaves us unsatisfied, because the image it conjures is uncanny. A mountain range, perfectly preserved, sleeping beneath ice like a forgotten corpse sealed in crystal, mapping the invisible. In the early 2000s, the mystery deepened as international teams launched AGAP, the Antarctic Gamburtsev Province Project. Using radar, gravimetry, and seismology, they painted a more detailed portrait of the hidden peaks. What they found was breathtaking. The Gamburtsev Range is not only sharp and high, but complex, with river valleys carved long before the ice, with ridges that suggest a history of tectonic drama. Some valleys seem to trace ancient drainage patterns, as if great rivers once flowed where now lies frozen silence. Imagine it. Long before the ice, the Gamburtsev Mountains may have resembled the European Alps, with snow-fed rivers tumbling through green valleys, perhaps forests spreading across their slopes, life thriving in a land no human eye ever saw. Now all of it lies buried. Ghosts of Gondwana. Geologists place the Gamburtsev Range at the heart of Antarctica's story. Their roots may tie back to the assembly of the supercontinent Gondwana, when Africa, South America, India, and Antarctica were bound as one. Later, when Gondwana fractured, the Gamburtsev chain became entombed within East Antarctica, its peaks hidden by ice, its valleys filled with silence. But for storytellers, the Gamburtsev Range becomes something else, the skeleton of a lost world, a landscape frozen before its time, preserved with impossible fidelity, waiting for rediscovery. Could valleys still hold sediments, fossils, perhaps traces of ecosystems long extinguished? Could caves and hollows beneath the mountains preserve more than stone? The questions linger. The mountain kingdom theory. Among alternative thinkers, the Gamburtsev Range has been linked to bold speculations. Some suggest that such a preserved range might once have been home to civilizations erased by sudden climate change. Others whisper of Antarctic Shangri-Las, fertile basins once warmed by geothermal heat, where humans, or something like them, could have thrived before the ice entombed all. There is no evidence for such claims, but the strangeness of the mountains, the way they defy geological expectation, leaves the door ajar. Mystery does not need proof to capture imagination. It needs only silence and the suggestion of the impossible. And the Gamburtsev Mountains provide both, an echo of Atlantis. Legends of lost lands often speak of kingdoms swallowed by sea or storm. But what of lands swallowed by ice? Some writers have wondered whether the Gamburtsev Mountains inspired, at least indirectly, myths of Atlantis, a great land lost in cataclysm, its memory fading into rumour. Could the ancestors of our species, wandering the earth in ages past, have glimpsed these lands in a warmer epoch? Could memories of lush valleys in the Antarctic interior have been carried forward, distorted into tales of a vanished world? These are speculations, not history. Yet they resonate because they ask us to consider a simple, haunting question. What have we forgotten? Technology as lantern. Today, our only eyes upon the Gamburtsev Range are instruments. Ice-penetrating radar sends waves into the depths, their echoes sketching outlines of peaks never touched by light. Seismic sensors listen for the vibrations of Earth's heart, reconstructing mountains from tremors. Gravity maps trace unseen ridges by the way they pull on orbiting satellites. It is as if we are exploring a dream, piecing together a landscape from shadows and whispers. No photograph will ever capture these mountains until the ice itself retreats, a process that may take millions of years, if it happens at all. And so the Gamburtsev Range remains both real and unreal, a paradox of presence and absence. The weight of silence. Perhaps the most haunting thing about the Gamburtsev Mountains is their silence. Other great ranges have voices, rivers rushing, avalanches thundering, winds howling through passes. The Gamburtsev Range has none. It lies under kilometers of ice, muffled, entombed. Its valleys echo with nothing. Its peaks pierce only darkness. To imagine standing there is impossible. There is no air, no sky, no light. Only blackness, pressure, and the cold weight of eternity. Yet the mountains endure, they wait. Lessons of stone and ice. What do the Gamburtsev Mountains teach us? First, they remind us that Earth is still mysterious. We live in an age when satellites can photograph the surface of Mars, yet entire mountain chains remain hidden on our own planet. Second, They blur the line between geology and myth. The sharpness of their peaks suggests youth. Their history suggests age. They exist outside of easy categories, much like the myths of lost empires. Finally, they remind us that preservation is possible, that under the right conditions, landscapes, and perhaps other things, can be sealed away, untouched, waiting to be discovered. The ghosts beneath. To call them the Ghost Mountains is more than poetic. They are ghosts in every sense, unseen, untouchable, echoes of a world that once was. They haunt our scientific understanding, forcing us to ask how mountains can be so sharp, so hidden, so preserved. They haunt our imagination, inviting us to dream of forgotten valleys, lost civilizations, buried kingdoms. Above them the ice stretches endlessly, white and empty, but below the ghosts remain. Perhaps one day, as the climate warms and the ice retreats, their peaks will rise into the open air again, revealed for the first time. Perhaps then we will walk their valleys and read the story written in their stones. Until then they remain a phantom range, a reminder that even in the age of satellites mysteries endure. The Gamburtsev Mountains are proof that the Earth keeps secrets, that what we think we know may only be the surface, and that beneath silence, beneath ice, whole worlds can sleep. Antarctica. The very word conjures whiteness, silence, emptiness. A continent of glaciers, a desert of snow. The coldest place on Earth, where nothing grows but lichen clinging to bare rock, and where winds howl at speeds that strip the skin. And yet there was a time when Antarctica was not white, but green. Not silent, but filled with the cries of birds, the rustle of leaves, the sound of rivers winding through forests. A time when the land at the bottom of the world was not dead, but alive, as lush and fertile as any jungle. The unearthing of an impossible past. The revelation came not from myth, but from the patient work of science. In 2017, a team of researchers drilled into the ice near the Amundsen sea coast, on the western edge of the continent. Their cores reached down not only into ice, but into sediments. Layers of earth that had been trapped for tens of millions of years. Within those sediments they found something extraordinary. Fossilized roots, pollen grains, and spores. Signs of plants, signs of trees, signs of a forest that once thrived in Antarctica's heart. The dating of these fossils placed them around 90 million years ago during the Cretaceous period when dinosaurs roamed the Earth. At that time, Antarctica was positioned near the South Pole, much as it is today. And yet, the climate was nothing like the frozen desert we know. Instead, it was warm. The average annual temperature was around 12 Celsius, similar to northern France or modern-day New Zealand. In summer, temperatures may have risen above 20 Celsius. Rainfall was heavy, sustaining a rainforest dense with ferns, conifers, and flowering plants. Imagine it, a forest stretching across the polar circle, green beneath months of midnight sun, enduring the long twilight of polar winter, alive with the hum of insects, the calls of birds, and the footsteps of reptiles. Antarctica was a paradise, the polar paradox. But how could this be? How could a land at the pole, where half the year is dark, sustain such abundance? The answer lies in Earth's ancient atmosphere. During the Cretaceous, carbon dioxide levels were far higher than today, creating a greenhouse world. Temperatures were warmer across the globe, and Antarctica, though still locked in months of winter darkness, was insulated by the greenhouse effect. Warm ocean currents carried heat toward the pole, keeping the continent's coasts ice-free and its interior lush. The forests were not identical to those we know today. They were dominated by conifers, cycads, and ferns, adapted to seasonal light and darkness. Some grew tall and dense, forming canopies. Others clung low to the ground, enduring months without sun. Beneath them, soils teemed with roots, fungi, and the delicate dance of life. It was, in every sense, a rainforest at the bottom of the world of giants, and in those forests life larger than plants stirred. Fossil evidence suggests that dinosaurs roamed ancient Antarctica, herbivores feeding on lush vegetation, predators stalking in the shadows. Species such as Cryolophosaurus, an early Jurassic predator, have been discovered on Antarctic rock. Other fossils point to hadrosaurs and even giant marine reptiles in nearby seas. The continent was not a wasteland. It was a cradle, a living theatre where the great reptiles of the Mesozoic age played out their drama. It is humbling to imagine. The same ground that today is silent, buried beneath kilometers of ice, once shook beneath the footsteps of dinosaurs, once resounded with the cries of living creatures, forests beneath the ice. Evidence of this verdant past lies not only in sediments, but in fossilized wood scattered across Antarctica. Geologists have found stumps and trunks preserved in stone, remnants of trees that once towered where glaciers now grind. Some still show growth rings, evidence of seasons long past. The most haunting are the fossil forests of the Transantarctic mountains. Here, entire stands of tree stumps remain rooted in place, as if petrified mid-growth. They are silent witnesses of a time when Antarctica was alive. Walk among them, if one could, and it would feel like stepping into a graveyard of giants. Stone trees, frozen not by ice but by time, their roots clutching at a soil that no longer exists. The Permian memory. The story stretches even further back. Long before the Cretaceous, during the Permian period some 250 million years ago, Antarctica was part of the supercontinent Gondwana. At that time, vast forests of Glossopteras, seed ferns with distinctive tongue-shaped leaves, blanketed the land. Fossils of these plants have been found across Antarctica, linking it to South America, Africa and India, all once joined in one colossal landmass. These forests thrived until the Permian-Triassic extinction, the Great Dying, when most of Earth's species vanished, but their imprint remains, pressed into Antarctic rocks, reminders of a time when the continent was green long before ice claimed it. When warmth fled, so how did paradise become prison? How did rainforests give way to deserts of ice? The answer is one of Earth's great transitions. Around 34 million years ago, at the end of the Eocene epoch, Antarctica drifted fully into its polar position, and global climates cooled. The opening of the Drake Passage between South America and Antarctica allowed the Antarctic circumpolar current to form, a current of frigid water encircling the continent, isolating it from warm ocean flows. The greenhouse world gave way to an icehouse. Glaciers spread, forests died, and within a few million years the continent was transformed. The last remnants of green vanished, replaced by ice sheets that endure to this day. What remains is silence. But beneath the ice the memory of green persists, in fossils, in pollen, in roots locked in sediments. Antarctica carries its past within itself, like a book sealed in crystal. A mirror for the present. This story is not only about the past, it is also a mirror for our present. The warm forests of the Cretaceous remind us of what Earth can become under high carbon dioxide levels. The ice sheets of today, melting under our influence, whisper of change yet to come. Antarctica has shifted before, from green to white. Could it shift again, in our lifetimes, in the centuries to come? Could forests one day return to the land we now see as eternal ice? The thought is sobering. The ice that seems so permanent is, in truth, only a phase. The continent has been green before, it may be green again. Myth and memory. For the storyteller, this deep history resonates with myth. The idea of a lost green Antarctica feels like a forgotten Eden, a paradise buried beneath ice. It tempts us to imagine not only forests and dinosaurs, but perhaps civilizations, people who might have thrived in warmer epochs, their traces erased by the coming of glaciers. Science does not confirm such visions, but memory and myth often entwine. When ancient maps seem to depict Antarctica ice-free, when legends speak of lands lost in catastrophe, we cannot help but wonder, were they echoes of a truth long buried? Antarctica's rainforest past provides a stage on which such questions can live. The silence that follows. Today the continent lies in stark contrast to its past. Where once trees swayed, only ice stands. Where rivers ran, glaciers crawl. Where birds sang and reptiles walked, only the wind cries across frozen plains. But the fossils remain. They are voices caught in stone, whispers of forests long vanished, testifying that Antarctica is not what it seems. It is not only a land of ice, it is a land of memory, of transformations, of forgotten worlds. And the greatest transformation may be yet to come. Antarctica was once green, it will not always be white. And in between these states, rainforest and ice desert, lies the haunting possibility that stories of lost empires and forgotten civilizations may not be fantasy, but distorted memories of a time when the continent was alive, when warmth ruled the poles, and when the impossible was for a time real. Before the ice, before even the rainforests of the Cretaceous, there was another world. A world older, stranger, more alien to us than we can easily imagine. More than 250 million years ago, Antarctica was not a frozen island at the end of the Earth. It was part of a great supercontinent called Gondwana, a landmass that bound together what we now know as South America, Africa, India, Australia, and Antarctica into a single vast body. In that age, the poles were not barren, they were fertile, and on Antarctica's soil grew forests unlike anything alive today. The seed ferns of the south. These forests were dominated by a peculiar plant, Glossopteris. Glossopteris was a seed fern, not a true tree, but something in between. It grew leaves shaped like long tongues, sometimes more than 30 centimeters long, veined like delicate fans. Whole groves of these plants rose across Gondwana, their trunks forming dense canopies, their roots binding the soils together. Fossils of Glossopteris have been found on every continent that once belonged to Gondwana, in India, in South America, in Africa, and in Antarctica. Each fossil is a fragment of a larger story, a botanical thread tying together lands now separated by oceans. When explorers in the 19th century found Glossopteris fossils in Antarctica, it was a revelation. It meant that this icy land, now sterile and lifeless, had once been warm enough to host vast forests. It also confirmed that continents we now see as distant had once been one. In that sense, Antarctica's rocks are not only records of climate, but of unity. They hold the memory of a time when Earth itself was stitched together differently, when life spread across one colossal supercontinent. The forests of Gondwana! What would these forests have looked like? Imagine standing on Antarctic soil 270 million years ago, during the late Permian period. You would not see ice. Instead, you would be surrounded by forests stretching to the horizon. Towering trees of Glossopteris lifted their leaves toward the pale sun. The ground beneath was damp, covered in mosses and fungi. The air was thick with moisture, heavy with the scent of resin and soil. Rivers coursed through the land, carving valleys, carrying nutrients. Insects whirred in the canopy. Amphibians crawled along the banks. Reptiles stalked through the undergrowth. It was a world alive with sound, with heat, with growth. Even in polar latitudes, where the sun disappeared for months each year, these plants endured. They adapted to the darkness, storing energy, shedding leaves when necessary, waiting patiently for light to return. In this way, Glossopteris became the backbone of a southern biosphere, feeding animals, creating soils, shaping ecosystems. Antarctica then was not an outlier. It was a cradle of life. The great dying. But the forests of Gondwana did not last forever. Around 252 million years ago, Earth entered its darkest chapter. In what scientists call the Permian-Triassic extinction event, more than 90% of marine life and 70% of terrestrial life vanished. It was the greatest mass extinction in Earth's history, greater than the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, greater than any catastrophe before or since. The causes are still debated. Some point to massive volcanic eruptions in Siberia, spewing carbon dioxide and methane into the air, creating a runaway greenhouse effect. Oceans acidified, temperatures soared, rainforests withered, species collapsed in a chain of death. The Glossopteris forests of Antarctica perished in this apocalypse. Their fossils are among the last records of that vanished world, leaves pressed into rock like the pages of a burnt book. When you hold a Glossopteris fossil in your hand, you hold not only the memory of a forest, but the echo of extinction. It is the last breath of a lost age sealed in stone, fossils as threads of memory. The Glossopteris leaves became more than scientific evidence. They became symbols. In the 19th century, before the theory of plate tectonics was widely accepted, the presence of identical fossils on distant continents baffled scientists. How could the same plant grow in India and South America, in Africa and Antarctica? Did the continents drift apart? Or were there once land bridges now swallowed by sea? Glossopteris became one of the key proofs of continental drift, a fragile leaf that carried the weight of a global theory. But beyond science, these fossils invite us into a deeper reflection. They show us that the land we call Antarctica is not fixed in identity. It has worn many faces: cradle of forests, grave of empires, desert of ice. Its stones are archives, not of a single truth, but of transformations. Gondwana's unity, Gondwana's fall. The supercontinent Gondwana eventually fractured. Around 180 million years ago, tectonic forces began to tear it apart. Rifts opened, oceans seeped in, South America drifted west, Africa north, India east. Antarctica remained behind, slowly creeping toward the pole. As Gondwana broke, its forests disappeared. New species arose. Dinosaurs replaced the old reptilian rulers. The climate shifted. Yet the memory of that unity remained, hidden in the stones. Today, when scientists match Glossopteris fossils across continents, they are reuniting a puzzle long broken. Each fossil is a bridge across time, across oceans, a reminder that the world we know, fragmented, divided, was once whole. Forests beneath our feet. What makes Antarctica so haunting is that these forests still lie beneath us, in spirit if not in flesh. Fossilized wood, pressed leaves, seams of coal, all speak of lush growth long vanished. Coal, in particular, is the compressed memory of those forests, their biomass transformed into black stone over millions of years. To think of coal beneath Antarctica is to realize that the ice we see today rests upon the graves of forests. The continent is a palimpsest, layers upon layers, life upon life, each erased and written over, but never fully gone. Myth and Gondwana. It is here that science brushes against myth. Ancient stories from cultures across the world speak of lands once joined, of continents swallowed by catastrophe, of ages when the earth was whole. Could these myths be distorted memories of Gondwana? Could human ancestors, carrying oral traditions across tens of thousands of years, have preserved whispers of a world that geology later confirmed? We cannot know. But the resonance is powerful. When we hear tales of lands that drifted apart, of kingdoms swallowed by floods, we cannot help but see in them a reflection of Gondwana's story. A supercontinent torn asunder, leaving fragments scattered across the globe. Antarctica's role. Among those fragments, Antarctica plays a peculiar role. It is both witness and victim. It was once a thriving limb of Gondwana, rich with forests. Then it was isolated, drawn into the cold, covered in ice, forgotten. But within its rocks lie the best preserved memories. Fossils of Glossopteris, stumps of ancient trees, imprints of ferns, all still there, waiting to be read. Antarctica is not merely the blank white of our maps. It is a library frozen shut, but one that, when opened, tells us of unity, of loss, of transformation, a whisper of continuity. When you hold a fossilized leaf of Glossopteris, thin and veined, you are touching a fragment of Gondwana's forests. That leaf may have once photosynthesized beneath a pale polar sun, feeding animals that no longer exist, dropping to soil that is now buried beneath kilometers of ice. And in that moment of contact, the past does not feel distant. It feels continuous. It feels alive. Antarctica was not always ice. It was once green. Before it was rainforest, it was Glossopteris groves. Before the silence, it was alive with sound. And the ice above it now? Perhaps that ice is not only a shroud, but a preservative, keeping intact the deeper truths we have yet to uncover. Gondwana remembered. The forests of Gondwana are gone. The continents have drifted apart. The world has changed beyond recognition. But Antarctica remembers. Its stones, its fossils, its buried coal. They are the threads of memory, reminders that the earth is not fixed, that it shifts and transforms, that nothing is permanent. And in those reminders lies a haunting lesson. What we see as eternal, ice, deserts, oceans, are only phases. The earth turns, and with each turn entire worlds vanish, only to leave faint echoes behind. Glossopteris, Gondwana, the forests of the south. Echoes pressed into stone waiting for us to listen. The human eye cannot see through ice. To us, Antarctica is a blank expanse, a seamless white stretching to the horizon. But machines, delicate, persistent, relentless, have given us new eyes. Eyes that pierce darkness, eyes that hear the earth's whispers, eyes that map what no human has ever touched. Through them, the hidden world beneath Antarctica begins to take shape. The first glimpses. In the mid-20th century, explorers could only guess at what lay beneath the ice. They crossed its surface with dog sleds and tracked vehicles, dragging instruments behind them. The earliest tools were crude seismographs, small explosives set off at the surface, their echoes bouncing through the ice to reveal shadows of what lay below. It was with such methods that the Gamburtsev mountains were first discovered in 1958. Scientists had fired charges into the ice and listened as sound waves ricocheted off hidden stone. The echoes revealed valleys and peaks that no one had ever seen. A phantom range beneath the white desert. It was a revelation. The ice concealed not emptiness, but landscapes. The language of radar. But the true revolution came with ice-penetrating radar. In the 1970s, aircraft flying over Antarctica began to carry radar systems that sent pulses of energy downward. These waves could penetrate the ice and bounce back from layers, from water, from bedrock. Each reflection was a fragment of truth, a piece of a hidden map. Over decades, survey after survey crisscrossed the continent collecting echoes. Slowly from these signals a picture emerged. Mountain ranges, valleys, ridges, and lakes, all entombed beneath kilometers of ice. Radar showed us Lake Vostok, smooth, flat reflections hinting at liquid water. It revealed channels of subglacial rivers connecting lakes in a secret circulatory system. It traced the outlines of basins and basements, of ridges and scars. It was as though a blindfold had been lifted. Satellites, eyes from the sky. From the 1990s onward, satellites took the work even further. Instruments like IceSat and later IceSat-2 used laser altimetry to measure the height of the ice surface with astonishing precision. When lakes beneath the ice filled or drained, the surface above them would rise or sink by mere centimeters, and satellites could detect it. Through these subtle shifts, scientists discovered that Antarctica's subglacial lakes are not stagnant but active. They breathe, they pulse. Water flows through them in cycles, filling, draining, connecting the hidden world to the ocean. It is strange to think that satellites orbiting hundreds of kilometers above Earth can watch the heartbeat of lakes sealed under kilometers of ice. And yet this is what technology allows. Vision without eyes, hearing without ears. Gravity maps. Another set of eyes comes not from light or sound, but from weight. Satellites such as GRACE, the Gravity Recovery and Climate Experiment, measure tiny variations in Earth's gravity field. Where mass is concentrated beneath the surface, the pull is stronger. Where it is absent, weaker. With this method, scientists detected the Wilkes Land anomaly, a vast circular mass beneath East Antarctica, possibly the scar of an ancient asteroid strike. Gravity maps reveal hidden basins, buried ridges, and density contrasts that may mark volcanic intrusions or tectonic scars. To read a gravity map is to read the unseen. It is to feel the pull of what lies below, to let the Earth's own weight draw its portrait. Bedmap and bed machine. Over the past 2 decades, radar, laser, seismic, and gravity data have been combined into continent-wide reconstructions known as bedmap and bed machine. These are not simple maps. They are mosaics, pieced together from countless flights, satellites, and surveys. The latest versions reveal a continent stranger than we imagined. Beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet lies the Gamburtsev Range, sharp and alpine. Beneath West Antarctica lies a labyrinth of deep basins, some extending below sea level, holding ice vulnerable to collapse. Under the surface, rivers thread through valleys, lakes expand and contract, mountains rise unseen. It is a land both familiar and alien. Familiar because it has mountains and rivers, ridges and valleys. Alien because no human eye has seen it. Only machines, only echoes, listening to the ice. Beyond radar and satellites, there are instruments that simply listen. Seismic arrays spread across the ice, recording the tremors of Earth's interior. Every earthquake that ripples through the planet sends waves racing beneath Antarctica. By timing their passage, by tracing their echoes, scientists reconstruct what lies below. The thickness of crust, the depth of mantle, the structure of hidden rock. It is as if the Earth itself speaks, and we are learning its language. Some seismic studies suggest plumes of heat rising from the mantle beneath West Antarctica, feeding subglacial volcanism. Others trace faults and rifts, scars of ancient tectonic battles. Each tremor carries a story. Technology as mythmaker. There is something paradoxical here. These instruments are the most advanced eyes humanity has ever wielded. They measure with precision beyond anything our senses can achieve, and yet, what they reveal feeds the oldest impulse of all, myth-making. Because the maps they produce are incomplete, blurred, suggestive. Radar returns can look like shapes, like lines, like patterns. Gravity maps sketch circles and scars. Altimetry traces rises and falls that hint at hidden motion. In these incomplete images, we see what we wish to see. Scientists see geology. Dreamers see pyramids, cities, fortresses. The same data can birth equations in one mind and legends in another. It is not the fault of the instruments. It is the hunger of imagination filling the gaps. The veil that remains. For all these eyes, much remains unseen. The radar beams scatter, the seismic echoes blur, the gravity maps are coarse, the pictures we have are outlines, not portraits. Antarctica still keeps its secrets. We know the broad strokes, the mountains, the basins, the Great Lakes, but not the details. If structures exist beneath the ice, human or otherwise, they may remain indistinguishable from natural ridges. If fossils lie in sediments, we will not find them with satellites. Our eyes are powerful, but imperfect. They show us just enough to remind us that we are blind. The next generation, yet the eyes grow sharper. New radar systems mounted on aircraft can map with greater resolution. Satellites like IceSat-2 use lasers so precise they can measure the thickness of a snow layer. Planned missions may one day drop drones beneath ice shelves, swimming into dark cavities and sending back images from places no light has touched. Each new technology is another lantern, and yet each lantern also deepens the shadows. The more we see, the more we realize how much remains hidden. A parable of knowledge. Perhaps there is a parable in this. Antarctica reminds us that to see is not always to know. Our machines pierce the ice, but they do not give us certainty. They give us possibilities, shapes, anomalies, whispers. The continent remains a mirror for our own desires. We use our eyes to project our fears, our hopes, our myths. Scientists see a laboratory for climate and geology. Dreamers see a vault of forgotten civilizations. Both are gazing through the same veil. The waiting game. In the end, technology can only take us so far. To truly know what lies beneath, we would have to drill, to touch, to disturb the sanctity of that frozen world. And with that comes risk, of contamination, of destruction, of breaking what has been preserved for millions of years. So for now, we remain voyeurs, peering through ice with our artificial eyes, glimpsing but never touching. Antarctica stays silent, watching us back, offering just enough to keep us intrigued, never enough to satisfy. The eyes of radar, of satellites, of seismic tremors, they're like dreams. They let us imagine landscapes we will never walk, mountains we will never climb, valleys we will never cross. They are proof that even in the 21st century, Earth still holds mysteries, still has places we cannot fully see. Antarctica remains veiled, but the eyes grow sharper, and the veil will not last forever. The world can change slowly, almost imperceptibly. Mountains rise grain by grain. Rivers carve valleys drop by drop. Glaciers creep meter by meter. But sometimes, change comes suddenly, brutally, all at once. All. Sometimes the Earth shifts in a single heartbeat. Antarctica's transformation from a fertile land to a desert of ice is usually told as a slow tale. Millions of years of cooling, tectonic drift, ocean currents shifting, glaciers spreading until the continent was buried. But there is another possibility, whispered in both science and myth, that some parts of this transformation may not have been slow at all, that perhaps the land at the bottom of the world was not only frozen, but frozen suddenly, frozen in a moment. The ice is a preservative. Most of the time, ice is seen as destructive, expanding, cracking, grinding mountains into dust, scouring valleys bare. But ice can also preserve. It seals, it protects, it suspends life in stasis. We know this from smaller examples. Mammoths in Siberia, buried in permafrost, still carry flesh on their bones, fur on their skin, even the contents of their stomachs preserved as if they had died yesterday. Ancient plants, trapped in ice for tens of thousands of years, can sometimes be coaxed back into life when thawed. Even microbes, sealed in glaciers for hundreds of thousands of years, awaken when given warmth and water. If ice can preserve a mammoth, what else might it have preserved? Sudden climate shifts. Earth's history is punctuated by abrupt shifts. The Younger Dryas, around 12,800 years ago, was a sudden return to glacial cold after the world had begun to warm. In only decades, climates flipped, species collapsed, and human cultures were forced to adapt. On longer timescales, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, or shifts in ocean currents have triggered abrupt transitions. The end of the Eocene, around 34 million years ago, when Antarctica first plunged into deep freeze, may not have been entirely gradual. Evidence suggests that within a geologically short window, perhaps only hundreds of thousands of years, forests gave way to ice sheets. Some regions may have iced over in mere centuries. To a human lifespan, centuries feel long, but to the Earth they are but a blink. Imagine a land thriving with forests, rivers, animals, and then, Within a handful of generations, snow that never melted. Glaciers advancing, valleys closing under white. A world turned from green to dead in the time it takes for memory to become legend. Preservation in catastrophe. Here is where imagination joins science. If parts of Antarctica froze quickly, then perhaps entire ecosystems, forests, valleys, even lakes, were sealed as they were. Not slowly erased, but suddenly embalmed. Think of Pompeii, frozen beneath volcanic ash, its people and buildings preserved mid-breath. Could Antarctica hold similar tableau, not of Roman citizens, but of entire landscapes, locked in ice as they were, unchanged for millions of years? If so, what stories might be trapped there? The civilization hypothesis. Here the narrative drifts into speculation. Some suggest that if Antarctica once harboured humans, or proto-humans, or even an advanced civilization, then a sudden freeze could explain why so little remains. Structures, artifacts, settlements, all could have been sealed under ice, preserved intact, awaiting rediscovery. Mainstream science does not support this view. Human evolution, as we understand it, places our species' emergence far later, long after Antarctica froze. But the preservation hypothesis fuels these alternative histories because it offers a mechanism, not erosion, not destruction, but sudden burial. And in sudden burial lies the possibility of perfect preservation. Geological plausibility. Even within sober geology, sudden freezes are plausible. Ice cores taken from Antarctica show evidence of rapid climate events. Spikes and drops in temperature recorded in bubbles of air. Sediments beneath ice reveal transitions that seem abrupt, layered like the turning of a page. Some researchers suggest that the growth of the Antarctic ice sheet may have begun with a threshold crossing. Once CO2 levels dropped low enough, ice accumulated rapidly, feedback loops took over, and within centuries vast glaciers swept across the land. Such mechanisms mean that what was alive one century could be buried the next. Myths of sudden freezes. Human cultures too carry myths of lands swallowed overnight. Stories of a world drowned by flood, of kingdoms buried by snow, of sudden darkness falling across the earth. The biblical flood, the Mesopotamian deluge, the Norse Fimbul winter, each speaks of catastrophe, of rapid transformation. Could such stories be cultural memories, distorted echoes of real climate shocks, passed down through generations? If humanity has always lived in the shadow of sudden change, then Antarctica becomes the ultimate symbol, a continent frozen not over eons but in moments. The preservation hypothesis and exploration. This is why Antarctica excites such speculation. Because ice is not only a destroyer, but a keeper. If the continent froze quickly, then what lies beneath may not be ruins eroded to dust, but worlds preserved. It may be nothing more than forests and rivers, perfectly embalmed in time, or it may be something else, something that forces us to reconsider our timeline, our origins, our understanding of civilization. Even scientists, cautious as they are, admit that drilling into subglacial lakes may reveal ecosystems preserved for millions of years, locked in total isolation. If microbes can survive, why not other traces? Sediments might hold DNA, pollen, fossils, tiny testaments to worlds no longer visible. And if nature preserves so well, could human hands have left marks that survived too? The price of knowing. But here lies the dilemma. To uncover such secrets we must break the seal. We must pierce the ice, disturb the purity, risk contamination. Every drilling project wrestles with this. To explore is to endanger. To know is to destroy what was untouched. The preservation hypothesis is both promise and curse. Antarctica may hold wonders, but to find them, we may have to shatter the very ice that keeps them safe. It is like opening a tomb. Once the seal is broken, the contents are forever changed. The metaphor of ice. On another level, the preservation hypothesis is a metaphor. Antarctica is the frozen subconscious of the Earth. All that has been lost, all that has been buried, lies beneath its surface. To study it is to engage with memory. Memory not in books or words, but in stone, in ice, in silence. Perhaps this is why Antarctica captures our imagination more than any other place. It is not only a continent, it is a vault of deep time, sealed by sudden cold, holding fragments of worlds that should have been erased. A world locked away. Think of it this way. If you could lift Antarctica's ice in a single instant as though peeling back a lid, you might see valleys still holding ancient forests, rivers still carved into bedrock, mountain ridges untouched by erosion. You might see the imprints of Glossopteris leaves, the stumps of petrified forests, perhaps even the silhouettes of ecosystems that vanished in the Great Dying. And if legend were true, if humans or civilizations walked here before the freeze, then perhaps their memory too lies waiting. Not dust, not ruins, not whispers, but walls, carvings, monuments, preserved in a moment of sudden burial. Frozen in time. Whether or not civilizations ever thrived here, the principle remains. Ice does not always erase. Sometimes it suspends. Sometimes it keeps. And so the story of Antarctica is not only about destruction, but about possibility. Possibility that in its depths lie worlds frozen in time, preserved not despite catastrophe, but because of it. The ice in this telling is both tomb and time capsule, both grave and library, both ending and beginning. The sudden freeze remains a hypothesis, debated, unproven, speculative. But it is a haunting one, because it offers us not only science, but story. It lets us imagine entire worlds paused in an instant, their details intact, waiting beneath the ice for us to rediscover them. And that imagination, that whisper of preservation, is enough to keep us looking. Because in a land of silence, the idea that something might still be there, unchanged, waiting, is perhaps the most powerful mystery of all. Here Earth seems eternal. Mountains rise, oceans spread, continents drift, but all at a pace so slow we cannot feel it. The continents move only centimetres each year, creeping like shadows across the globe. But what if the Earth did not always move so gently? What if entire continents could shift suddenly, violently, throwing whole civilizations into new latitudes in the span of centuries, or even years? This is the haunting idea of crustal displacement, a theory that suggests Antarctica was not always where it is today, and that its sudden shift into polar darkness could explain why an entire world might have been frozen in an instant. The birth of a controversy. The theory was popularized in the mid-20th century by Charles Hapgood, a history professor who published the book Earth's Shifting Crust in 1958. Unlike plate tectonics, which was only beginning to gain scientific acceptance, Hapgood proposed something more radical. He argued that the entire outer shell of the Earth, its crust, could sometimes slip over the softer mantle below, shifting continents thousands of kilometers in relatively short spans of time. In Hapgood's vision, the poles were not fixed. They wandered dramatically, carrying whole continents into new climates. Antarctica, he suggested, might once have been in a temperate zone, home to forests, perhaps even civilizations. Then, in a geological instant, it was displaced, dragged into its current polar position, entombed in ice. The appeal of this idea was immediate. It explained myths of sudden floods and freezes, accounted for strange maps that seemed to depict Antarctica free of ice, and gave storytellers a framework for imagining lost empires swallowed by cataclysm. Einstein's interest. Even Albert Einstein, in the last years of his life, entertained Hapgood's ideas. Einstein wrote a foreword to Earth's Shifting Crust, noting that while the mechanism seemed uncertain, the hypothesis was worth exploring. He found the concept intriguing, that the build-up of polar ice might create an imbalance, eventually causing the crust to slip and reposition itself. Einstein remained cautious. He admitted that he did not see a clear physical process that could drive such rapid displacements. Yet his involvement gave the theory an aura of credibility, enough to keep it alive in the public imagination. If Einstein was willing to wonder, then perhaps there was something there. Science and skepticism. Mainstream geology, however, has never embraced Hapgood's vision. With the rise of plate tectonics in the 1960s, scientists found a far more robust framework for explaining continental drift. Plates move slowly over mantle convection currents, colliding to form mountains, spreading to form oceans, but always at speeds measured in centimeters per year. The idea of the entire crust suddenly slipping over the mantle is considered implausible by geophysicists. The friction, the inertia, the sheer energy required would be astronomical. Earth's crust is broken into plates, not a single shell that can glide easily. Today, geologists acknowledge true polar wander, slow shifts in Earth's rotational axis relative to its crust. But these occur over millions of years, not overnight. And yet, the allure of Hapgood's theory persists. Because even if science dismisses it, imagination clings to it. Why the theory persists? The persistence of crustal displacement as a cultural idea lies not in its mechanics, but in its story. It offers a dramatic explanation for the puzzles of Antarctica, why ancient maps seem to show it free of ice, why myths speak of sudden floods and freezes, why the continent feels less like a barren desert and more like a hidden vault. It also resonates with our deepest fears. The idea that the Earth itself might shift violently beneath us, tearing apart civilizations, burying continents, and erasing memory, touches something primal. It suggests that stability is an illusion, that the ground beneath our feet is not as permanent as we believe. For storytellers, this is irresistible. The cataclysmic imagination. Consider the image: an advanced culture flourishing in a green Antarctica, building cities, mapping stars. And then, one day, the crust slips. In weeks or months, the land plunges into polar latitudes. Temperatures plummet, snow does not melt, crops fail, rivers freeze. In a generation, the continent is buried under kilometers of ice. The people vanish, the buildings vanish, the memory vanishes. All is sealed, perfectly preserved, waiting for the day when the ice begins to melt again. It is a cataclysm worthy of myth. Atlantis swallowed by sea, Lemuria lost beneath waves, and Antarctica entombed in ice. All become variations of the same archetype: the sudden destruction of a world. The Piri Reis connection. Supporters of Hapgood often point to maps like the Piri Reis Map of 1513, which appears to depict coastlines resembling Antarctica without its ice cover. If true, it would suggest that someone in antiquity mapped the continent before it froze. Mainstream historians argue that the map more likely represents South America, distorted and extended, misinterpreted by later readers. But within the crustal displacement framework, such maps become tantalizing clues, fragments of a lost cartography, preserved through the ages. The theory thus becomes not just geological, but archaeological, linking anomalies in human history to cataclysms in Earth's history. Ice and memory. Even if Hapgood's theory is scientifically implausible, it carries a poetic truth. Antarctica has not always been ice. It has been forests, rivers, and swamps. It has shifted, through tectonics and climate, from life to silence. Whether by slow drift or sudden slip, the effect is the same: a land once fertile now frozen, a world erased yet preserved. Perhaps this is why people cling to the idea of crustal displacement, because it preserves the hope that beneath the ice lies not only geology, but memory. Memory of a time when the land was alive, memory of people who may have known it. The archetype of sudden change. At a deeper level, Hapgood's theory resonates because it mirrors a universal human fear, that the world can change too fast for us to adapt. Flood myths, apocalypse myths, end-of-age myths, all are echoes of this fear. Crustal displacement is a geological version of the same archetype. It says, the earth itself can betray you. The sky can shift. The ground can move. Everything you know can be erased not in millennia, but in moments. And though science rejects the mechanism, history confirms the fear. Civilizations have collapsed from climate shifts, from earthquakes, from volcanoes. Life is fragile. Memory is fragile. The Earth does not promise permanence. Between science and story, in the end, the crustal displacement theory is not valuable because it is true, but because it is haunting. It reminds us that the Earth is not fixed. It tells us that continents move, climates transform, and ice comes swiftly when thresholds are crossed. It blurs the line between science and myth, between tectonics and apocalypse, between geology and legend. Antarctica, in this story, becomes the ultimate symbol: a land displaced, a world erased, a memory waiting to be thawed. Einstein's whisper. Einstein's cautious words remain a fitting epitaph for the theory. He did not endorse Hapgood's mechanics, but he admitted the idea was worth considering, worth exploring as a possibility. That perhaps is enough, because sometimes the value of a theory lies not in its correctness, but in the doors it opens in the imagination. Hapgood's vision opened doors that remain ajar today, doors to Atlantis beneath ice, to civilizations erased by sudden shifts, to the haunting possibility that our maps of history are incomplete, and so the theory endures, not as science but as story. Antarctica may not have been flung into its frozen place in an instant, but it was transformed, from green to white, from fertile to barren, from alive to silent, and in that transformation, whether sudden or slow, lies the same lesson. Nothing is permanent, not forests, not empires, not even continents. The Earth moves, the Earth shifts, the Earth forgets, but sometimes it remembers. There are shapes that haunt the human mind. Circles remind us of eternity, spirals of cycles, but pyramids speak of intention. Their sharp angles and sloping sides seem too deliberate to be the work of accident. We associate them with power, with design, with mystery. And so when satellite images of Antarctica revealed sharp, triangular peaks rising from the ice, the imagination seized on them instantly. Could there be pyramids at the bottom of the world? The Nunatak illusion. The peaks in question lie in Wilkes Land and other regions of West Antarctica. They are isolated mountains known as nunataks, rocky summits that protrude through the ice, exposed while the glaciers bury everything else. At first glance, some of these nunataks appear uncannily geometric. Their sides slope evenly, their ridges meet at points that resemble apexes. From the air, they look strikingly like the pyramids of Giza, only larger, lonelier, and frozen. Geologists explain the shapes easily. Glacial erosion, combined with fracturing and freeze-thaw weathering, can sculpt mountains into triangular forms. The process is well known in alpine environments, where sharp peaks, called pyramidal peaks or horns, arise from glaciers gnawing on all sides of a mountain. The famous Matterhorn in the Alps is one such natural pyramid, but for many the Antarctic peaks look too precise, too deliberate, too reminiscent of human architecture to dismiss as coincidence. And so the paradox arises, are these nunataks simply geology or something more? The eye of the imagination. Our minds are pattern-seeking engines. We are wired to see faces in clouds, animals in constellations, meaning in randomness. This tendency, called pareidolia, makes us prone to recognizing familiar shapes even when none are intended. But pareidolia is also what fuels myth. When explorers first saw faces in rocks on Mars, some declared them alien monuments. When ancient peoples saw patterns in stars, they spun them into stories of gods and heroes. So too with Antarctica. When satellites trace sharp triangles among the nunataks, our minds leapt to pyramids, to civilizations, to secrets frozen beneath the ice. Because pyramids, unlike other shapes, carry a weight of history. They call to us of lost knowledge, of kings and gods, of mysteries designed to endure. Echoes of ancient architecture. Consider the parallels. Across the world, ancient peoples built pyramids, in Egypt, in Mesoamerica, in Mesopotamia, in China. Some are smooth-sided, others stepped, but all share the same geometry, wide bases narrowing to points. Why did so many cultures converge on the same shape? Some say it was simply practical. A pyramid is stable, able to rise tall without collapsing. Others believe it was symbolic, a ladder between earth and sky, a beacon pointing toward the heavens. When we see pyramid shapes in Antarctica, we instinctively connect them to this global tradition. Could it be that the ice hides another pyramid-building culture older than all the rest? Could these frozen peaks be monuments, not mountains? Geologists scoff. To them the comparison is superficial, but myth does not require geology's permission. Myth requires only resonance, and the pyramid resonates deeply. The forbidden hypothesis. Among alternative theorists, a bold suggestion emerges that Antarctica was once home to an advanced civilization, perhaps tens of thousands of years ago, before the ice engulfed it. In this telling, the pyramid-shaped nunataks are not accidents, but remnants, weathered monuments of stone still visible despite eons of snow. Supporters point to the Piri Reis Map, which some claim depicts an ice-free Antarctic coast, and to myths of Atlantis, a great civilization destroyed by catastrophe. Could Antarctica be Atlantis, they ask? Its pyramids still standing, hidden in plain sight. Mainstream historians reject this, of course. Human civilization as we know it did not exist when Antarctica's climate was last warm enough to support large-scale societies. But the imagination does not obey such boundaries. The pyramid paradox remains alluring precisely because it straddles the line between possible and impossible, the silence of science. Why, then, does science not investigate these peaks more directly? Partly because they are remote. The nunataks lie deep in Antarctica's interior, accessible only by air or perilous expeditions. Resources for research are limited, and priorities focus on climate studies, ice cores, and ocean dynamics, not chasing shapes that resemble architecture. Partly too because science does not indulge speculation without evidence. To geologists, the explanation of natural erosion is more than sufficient. Mountains can look like pyramids, end of story. And yet, the images remain, the triangles remain, and for those who look, the silence of science is not satisfying. The refusal to explore only deepens the sense of mystery. Pyramids is archetype. Perhaps the pyramid paradox endures because pyramids are more than structures. They are archetypes. They represent endurance, built to last thousands of years. They represent mystery, tombs and temples that conceal secrets within. They represent power, commanding landscapes, pointing toward eternity. When we see pyramids in Antarctica, whether real or illusory, we're not just seeing shapes. We're seeing an archetype echoed by nature itself, as if the Earth were conspiring to remind us of something. Perhaps that is why we cannot look away. Between mountain and monument, let us imagine both possibilities. If the Antarctic pyramids are natural, then they are still wondrous. Mountains sculpted by ice into forms that mirror our oldest architecture. They are nature imitating culture, geology echoing myth. They show us that the Earth itself can create shapes that stir our deepest associations. If, on the other hand, they are artificial, then the implications are staggering. It would mean that Antarctica once hosted a civilization capable of building on a monumental scale, long before recorded history. It would demand a rewriting of human origins, a reconsideration of every timeline we hold sacred. Either way, the paradox remains. Whether natural or artificial, the Antarctic pyramids haunt us because they touch both science and story, both fact and dream. The weight of silence. In the end, we do not know. The peaks remain unvisited by detailed surveys. No one has chipped rock from their faces. No one has mapped their flanks in detail. They exist only in satellite images and distant photographs, half real, half imagined. And in that silence, the paradox grows stronger. For sometimes, the less we know, the more we dream. A whisper from the ice. Perhaps this is the true power of the Antarctic pyramids. Not whether they are natural or artificial, but that they remind us how fragile our sense of history is, how little we truly know about the deep past, how easily we mistake permanence for certainty. The ice is a mirror, and in its reflections we see what we long for: lost empires, forgotten wisdom, civilizations erased but not gone. The pyramid shapes whisper to us because we are ready to hear them, because we want the world to hold secrets, because we need to believe that not all has been explained. The pyramid paradox is unsolved. Perhaps one day explorers will stand on those peaks, measure their angles, drill their cores, and prove once and for all that they are nothing but mountains. Perhaps not. Perhaps the ice will keep its secret, teasing us forever with shapes that refuse to be ordinary. But whether they are stone or monument, mountain or memory, they remind us of a deeper truth, that Antarctica is a place where the line between nature and myth blurs, where mountains can become pyramids, where imagination can become archaeology, where silence itself can feel like a message. And so the pyramids of Antarctica endure, not as facts, but as questions. And sometimes questions are more powerful than answers. Maps are more than lines on parchment. They are memories, they are promises. They are the imagination of explorers pressed into ink, turning the unknown into something that can be held, studied, and remembered. Most maps tell us not only where things are, but what a people believed about the world at the time they drew them, and sometimes maps whisper of things that should not have been known. The most famous of these whispers lies in a fragment of vellum created more than 500 years ago by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis, a map out of place. In 1513, Piri Reis, a skilled navigator and cartographer, compiled a map of the world. He drew on earlier sources, charts from Arab sailors, maps from Portuguese explorers, even ancient Greek references said to have been preserved through centuries. The result was a world map that astonished later generations. The surviving fragment, discovered in 1929 in Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, shows the western coasts of Europe and Africa and the eastern coast of South America. But it is the southern edge of the map that has ignited controversy. There below South America is drawn a coastline that some interpret as Antarctica. Not Antarctica as we know it, buried under ice, harsh and desolate, but an Antarctica seemingly free of its frozen shroud, its coasts mapped in detail centuries before official discovery. To historians, this is puzzling. Antarctica was not sighted by Europeans until 1820, 300 years after Piri Reis's map, and yet here it seems to be. The case for Antarctica: those who believe the Piri Reis map depicts Antarctica argue that the coastline aligns with Queen Maud Land, part of East Antarctica. The shape is not exact, but the suggestion is strong enough to intrigue. More startling, they argue, is that the map shows the coast without ice. According to conventional science, Antarctica has been covered by ice for millions of years. How could a 16th century admiral have drawn it? Supporters of this interpretation suggest that Piri Reis must have had access to much older sources, perhaps maps created thousands of years earlier when Antarctica's coasts were visible. If true, This would mean that some forgotten civilization had charted the continent long before recorded history, preserving knowledge that trickled down through the ages. It is a tantalizing idea. The skeptical view. Mainstream historians, however, offer a more cautious explanation. They argue that the southern coastline on the Piri Reis Map is not Antarctica at all, but an exaggerated extension of South America. Early cartographers often struggled with scale, and maps frequently showed land masses larger or differently shaped than they truly were. In this interpretation, the supposed Antarctic coast is simply the southern tip of South America, distorted and drawn farther east than it should be. The resemblance to Antarctica is coincidence, nothing more. Moreover, they argue, even if ancient civilizations had mapped Antarctica ice-free, the ice sheets have covered the continent for at least 30 million years. Humans did not exist then. To suggest otherwise requires rewriting the entire timeline of evolution. For historians, the Piri Reis Map is fascinating, but not evidence of lost civilizations. Between caution and wonder, and yet the debate endures, because the map itself exists. It is not rumour or forgery. It is real, ink on vellum, dated and signed, and its southern coast remains ambiguous enough to keep speculation alive. It is here that science and myth part ways. Scientists insist on error and distortion. Dreamers see forbidden memory, preserved against all odds. The Piri Reis Map becomes a mirror, reflecting back whatever we bring to it. Skepticism or wonder, logic or longing. Echoes of Atlantis. For those drawn to myth, the map is irresistible. If Antarctica was once ice-free, perhaps it was not only charted but inhabited. Perhaps it was Atlantis itself, not a land that sank beneath waves, but a continent buried beneath ice. In this vision, the Piri Reis Map is a fragment of forbidden history, proof that the ancients knew of lands we thought undiscovered. Some claim that Atlantean survivors passed down their maps to Egyptians or Phoenicians, who preserved them through the ages until they reached Ottoman hands. Of course, these are speculations, yet they persist because they answer our hunger for connection, a link between myth and artifact, between legend and ink. Piri Reis himself, what did the admiral think of his own map? In his notes, Piri Reis admitted he had compiled it from many sources, some new, some ancient. He claimed to have used maps from Columbus, from Portuguese sailors, and from maps drawn in the days of Alexander the Great. This last claim is tantalizing. Did he truly have access to Greek charts from antiquity, preserved in secret archives? Or was this a flourish, a way of lending authority to his work? We cannot know. But the suggestion that knowledge can endure across millennia through hidden channels feeds the mystery. The power of maps. Maps carry a peculiar power. They are both practical tools and symbols of control. To map a land is to claim knowledge of it, to draw its borders, to make it real. A coastline drawn on paper feels more certain than rumour, more enduring than memory. And yet, maps are also fragile. They contain distortions, biases, guesses. They show as much of what people believed as of what they truly saw. The Piri Reis Map, then, is both evidence and illusion. Evidence that knowledge circulated widely, illusion in its distortions and errors. It is this duality that makes it dangerous, seductive, powerful. Forbidden knowledge. The idea that the Piri Reis Map contains forbidden knowledge has fascinated generations. In the 20th century, writers like Charles Hapgood seized on it as proof of crustal displacement, evidence that Antarctica had once been mapped ice-free. From there, it became a cornerstone of alternative histories, cited in countless books and documentaries. To believers, it is the smoking gun. To skeptics, it is nothing more than misinterpretation. But either way, the map does what all great mysteries do. It refuses to be forgotten. The silence of the ice. Imagine for a moment that the map is true, that someone thousands of years ago walked the coasts of a warm Antarctica, charting its bays and headlands, that they passed this knowledge forward through empires and libraries until it reached Piri Reis. If so, then the map is not only ink, it is memory. Memory of a world erased, preserved only in fragments of parchment. And if it is not true, if the coast is only distortion, then the map still speaks, not of Antarctica itself, but of our desire for it. Our longing for mystery, for forbidden history, for proof that we are not the first. Between known and unknown, the Piri Reis Map sits at the threshold between the known and the unknown. To science, it is a flawed chart. To myth, it is revelation. To history, it is an artifact of its age. To imagination, it is a doorway. What matters most is not which interpretation is correct, but that the map endures, that it continues to stir debate 5 centuries after it was drawn, because that is the true power of mystery, not to provide answers, but to keep questions alive. A map as a whisper. Perhaps the Piri Reis Map is best understood not as proof, but as whisper. A whisper from the past that may or may not be true, but that reminds us of how much we do not know. A whisper that tells us history is never complete, that memory can be erased, that ink on parchment may sometimes hold more than lines. It may hold longing, myth, and forgotten worlds. And in that sense it belongs perfectly in the story of Antarctica. A land hidden, erased, debated. A land that may yet reveal its secrets, but for now remains a mirror of our imagination. The Piri Reis Map is not the key to Antarctica, but it is a symbol that knowledge can survive beyond its time, that fragments can outlast whole civilizations, and that the line between truth and myth is thinner than we think. Whether it shows South America or Antarctica, ice-free or distorted, it reminds us of the same truth. The world is larger than we know, and memory is longer than we believe. Science and legend often seem like opposites. Science seeks evidence, weighs data, demands proof. Legend thrives on whispers, symbols, dreams. And yet, when we stand before Antarctica, the frozen continent of silence, both science and legend find themselves staring at the same veil. Both look at the same anomalies. Both sense that something extraordinary lies hidden. The difference is only in the language they use. The anomalies. Think of the evidence science has already uncovered. Lake Vostok, a vast inland sea sealed under kilometers of ice, where microbes stir in darkness. The Wilkes Land anomaly, a circular gravity scar beneath East Antarctica, hinting at an impact crater or something stranger. The Gamburtsev mountains, jagged peaks preserved for 1 billion years, hidden beneath the ice like a phantom range. Subglacial fossils, roots and pollen that tell us Antarctica was once green, alive with rainforests. The Piri Reis Map, a fragment of vellum that may or may not depict Antarctica's coasts long before its official discovery. Pyramid-shaped nunataks, triangular peaks that evoke architecture as much as geology. To scientists, each of these has explanations. Microbes are extremophils, anomalies are geological quirks, mountains are preserved by ice, maps are distorted, nunataks are shaped by erosion. To legends, these same facts mean something else. They become proof of lost civilizations, forgotten knowledge, ancient cataclysms. Both narratives walk hand in hand, looking at the same mysteries, drawing different conclusions. 2 languages, 1 world. It is as if the world itself speaks in 2 voices. One voice is cautious, careful, precise. The other is bold, poetic, dreamlike. Science says, Lake Vostok holds microbes. Legend says, what else might it hold? Science says, the Wilkes Land anomaly is likely an asteroid scar. Legend says, could it be a buried dome, a vault, a city? Science says, the Gamburtsev mountains are preserved by ice. Legend says, mountains so sharp, so perfect, feel like monuments. Science says, the Piri Reis Map is distorted South America. Legend says, it is Antarctica before the ice. Science says, the pyramid peaks are nunataks shaped by glaciers. Legend says, they are pyramids built by hands we have forgotten. Both look at the same object. Both see truth, but not the same truth. The echo of Atlantis. Nowhere is this blending clearer than in the story of Atlantis. Plato wrote of a great civilization destroyed in a single night and day of catastrophe, swallowed by the sea. Scholars debate whether it was allegory, invention, or memory. But for those drawn to Antarctica's mysteries, the parallels are irresistible. A lost land, erased by cataclysm, remembered only in fragments. A great civilization, gone without trace, hidden from history. When science uncovers pollen and forest beneath Antarctic ice, legend sees Atlantis' gardens. When satellites reveal sharp peaks, legend sees Atlantis' temples. When maps show strange coasts, legend sees Atlantis' surviving cartographers. Antarctica becomes Atlantis by another name, not drowned by sea but by snow. The myth of the vault. Another legend whispers of a vault beneath the ice. A library of knowledge, perhaps left by ancient civilizations, perhaps even by visitors from beyond. This vault theory draws strength from scientific discoveries. If microbes can survive in sealed lakes for millions of years, why not scrolls, tools, or artifacts preserved by sudden freeze? If mammoths in Siberia can emerge with fur intact, why not structures preserved under Antarctic ice? Science shows that ice preserves. Legend imagines what might have been preserved. Between them, a narrative forms that Antarctica is not merely a desert, but a vault of memory waiting to be opened. The archetypes that persist. Legends endure because they resonate with archetypes, universal symbols that humans carry across cultures. Antarctica seems to embody several at once. The Hidden Kingdom, a place unseen by ordinary eyes, sealed away, awaiting rediscovery. The Frozen Tomb, a land of death that nevertheless preserves the past. The Forbidden Zone, a place humanity is not meant to touch, where entry is perilous, secrets guarded. The Mirror World, a reflection of our own civilizations, hinting that we are not the first nor the last. Science, too, engages with archetypes, though it may not admit it. When scientists describe Antarctica as an alien world, or as a laboratory for other planets, they echo the same archetype of the forbidden and the unknown. Science as story. There is another truth here. Science itself is a kind of story. The ice cores are chapters of a book, each layer a page of climate and time. The fossils are footnotes from vanished forests. The maps are illustrations, partial, blurred, but compelling. When a scientist stands before a radar map of hidden valleys, they are not so different from a bard describing a mythical land. Both are reconstructing worlds that cannot be seen. Both are filling in blanks with imagination, guided by evidence or by myth, but imagination nonetheless. In this sense, science and legend are not enemies. They are cousins telling the same story in different tongues. The power of uncertainty. Perhaps the greatest reason Antarctica blurs science and legend is that it remains uncertain. It is not fully mapped, not fully explored, not fully explained. Uncertainty is fertile ground. It allows multiple interpretations to bloom. Where data ends, myth begins. Where evidence falls silent, imagination speaks. The Wilkes Land anomaly is not proven to be a crater, so it might be something else. The pyramids are not proven to be artificial, so they might be. The Piri Reis Map is not proven to be South America, so it might be Antarctica. It is this uncertainty that keeps both scientists and dreamers captivated. The unanswered question is more powerful than the answered one. The caution of the ice. And yet there is caution. Antarctica is not easily approached. Its ice is both protector and barrier. To drill risks contamination. To excavate risks destruction. Science hesitates because of ethics. Legend hesitates because of fear that the truth may be stranger or more mundane than imagined. Both hesitate, though for different reasons, and in that hesitation, the mystery endures. When legends inspire science, there are times when legend even fuels science. Myths of lands beneath the sea inspired ocean exploration. Tales of hidden kingdoms spurred archaeologists to dig. Even Atlantis, dismissed as allegory, led to expeditions and research that uncovered real ancient sites. In the same way, the legends of Antarctica push us to ask questions science might not otherwise consider. Could ecosystems thrive in total darkness? Could ice preserve entire landscapes? Could rapid shifts in Earth's crust explain sudden climate changes? In answering these, science sometimes finds more than it expected. The meeting place. Antarctica, then, is the meeting place of science and legend. Science peers through radar, drills cores, measures gravity. Legend peers through myth, through archetypes, through whispers of memory. Both stand at the same threshold. Both try to describe what lies beneath the ice, one with equations, the other with stories. And perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between, not in the extremes of certainty or fantasy, but in the middle space where evidence and imagination overlap. The enduring question. In the end, what unites science and legend is not answers but questions. What is hidden beneath Antarctica's ice? How sudden was its transformation? What has been preserved in its frozen vaults? And most haunting of all, are we the first to walk this earth or simply the latest? Science cannot yet answer. Legend answers boldly but without proof. Between them lies the mystery that keeps us listening, keeps us imagining, keeps us waiting for the ice to reveal its secrets. Antarctica is both fact and fable. It is both data and dream. It is both laboratory and legend. And as long as the ice endures, both voices, science and myth, will continue to echo across its silence, neither silencing the other, but amplifying the mystery together. There is a silence in Antarctica deeper than the silence of snow. It is the silence of untouched worlds, places sealed for millions of years, where no breath of wind, no step of life, no trace of humanity has intruded. To touch such places is to break that silence forever. And so, while scientists and dreamers alike long to uncover what lies beneath the ice, to drill into subglacial lakes, to probe anomalies, to unseal the continent's frozen vault, a haunting question lingers. Should we? The first break in the seal. When Russian researchers drilled into Lake Vostok in 2012, it was a moment of triumph. For decades, they had worked carefully, inching down through nearly 4 kilometers of ice to reach the lake's surface. When the drill finally broke through, pressurized water surged up, freezing instantly as it touched the borehole. For the first time in 15 million years, the lake had touched the outside world, but triumph was mixed with unease. Critics worried that the kerosene and antifreeze used to keep the borehole open might contaminate the pristine water. What if, in seeking knowledge, humanity had already destroyed what it wished to discover? This is the paradox. To study the untouched, we must touch it, and in touching it, we change it forever. Life in isolation. The stakes are immense because Antarctica's subglacial lakes may hold ecosystems unlike any on Earth. Microbes, sealed away in isolation, might have evolved independently for millions of years. They could represent not just rare species, but entirely unique forms of life, clues to how life survives in darkness, pressure, and cold. To contaminate such systems is to risk erasing them before we even know they exist. A single foreign microbe introduced by drilling could overwhelm a fragile ecosystem, rewriting a biological story that has taken eons to unfold. It would be like opening a time capsule only to spill modern ink across its ancient scrolls. The cosmic mirror. The ethical stakes extend beyond Earth. Subglacial lakes are often seen as analogues for alien oceans. Europa's sea beneath its icy crust, Enceladus's waters hidden below frozen plains. If we cannot explore Antarctica without contaminating it, how can we hope to explore other worlds without destroying their secrets? Antarctica becomes a rehearsal stage not only for discovery but for responsibility. It asks us, are we capable of restraint? Can curiosity coexist with respect? Or will the hunger to know always outweigh the duty to preserve? The allure of anomalies. And what of the greater mysteries? The Wilkes Land anomaly, the pyramid-like peaks, the strange scars revealed by radar. To investigate them fully would require massive drilling, excavation, perhaps even tunneling through kilometers of ice. Such projects would not only risk contamination, but also scar the continent itself, disturbing ecosystems, altering flows, reshaping the ice. Do we have the right to do this? To strip Antarctica of its silence in pursuit of answers? Or is the greater wisdom to let its mysteries endure untouched? The dilemma is stark. To know is to destroy, to preserve is to remain in ignorance. The Treaty of Silence. Antarctica is unique among continents in that it has no sovereign nation, no native people, no government of its own. Instead, it is governed by the Antarctic Treaty System, signed in 1959, which designates the land for peaceful and scientific purposes only. Military activity is banned, resource exploitation is restricted. This treaty is often celebrated as a rare triumph of global cooperation, a recognition that some places belong not to one nation, but to all of humanity. But the treaty also reflects an implicit ethic, that Antarctica is more than territory. It is a sanctuary, a place where human ambition must bow before silence. And yet, even within this framework, tensions grow. Nations eye the continent's minerals, its potential resources, its strategic position. Expeditions press deeper, using more advanced technologies. The line between exploration and exploitation blurs. The ethical question is not abstract, it is urgent. The value of ignorance. We often assume that knowledge is always good, that discovery is always progress. But Antarctica asks us to consider the value of ignorance. What if there is wisdom in not knowing? What if the preservation of untouched worlds is more important than the answers they hold? There is something sacred in the idea of a lake sealed for 15 million years, never touched by light or life beyond its own. To open it, to probe it, to take samples, even in the name of science, is to end that purity forever. In a world where every mountain has been climbed, every ocean floor mapped, every frontier breached, Antarctica remains one of the last untouched realms. To keep it that way may be an act of reverence, between wonder and greed, and yet human nature is restless. We are drawn to mystery, compelled to uncover. The very existence of anomalies and whispers beneath the ice tempts us. Are they craters or domes? Natural or artificial? Civilization or geology? For some, this curiosity is pure wonder. For others, it is greed, the thought that beneath the ice may lie resources, technologies, even relics of power. The danger is that in our pursuit we confuse wonder with possession, that we approach Antarctica not as a sanctuary but as a prize, and in doing so, we risk turning its silence into another battlefield of human ambition, the ethical imagination. To imagine the ethical dilemma is itself an act of imagination. Picture standing on the edge of a borehole, staring down into darkness, knowing that what lies below has been untouched for millions of years. Your instruments are ready. Your drill hums. You have the power to pierce the silence. Do you lower the drill, or do you step back and let the silence remain? It is not only a scientific question, but a spiritual one. It asks what kind of species we wish to be, conquerors of mystery, or guardians of it, lessons from other frontiers. History gives us sobering lessons. When humans reached new islands, ecosystems collapsed. When explorers carried rats, pigs, and diseases, they forever altered the lands they touched. Curiosity often brought destruction. Antarctica may be our chance to choose differently, to explore with humility, to acknowledge that not all doors should be opened, not all secrets unsealed. And yet we must also admit the temptation is immense. To resist it entirely may be impossible. The middle path. Perhaps the answer lies in balance. We cannot preserve Antarctica entirely untouched. We are already there, drilling, measuring, mapping. But we can approach with care. We can limit intrusion, use sterile techniques, prioritize preservation over speed. We can treat the continent not as a resource to exploit, but as a trust to safeguard. It is the middle path, to explore, but gently, to seek knowledge, but not at the expense of silence, to let Antarctica remain, as much as possible, a sanctuary, a mirror of ourselves. Ultimately, the ethical dilemmas of Antarctica are less about the continent than about us. The ice is a mirror, reflecting our choices, our values, our character. If we treat it as a vault to plunder, then we reveal ourselves as restless and greedy. If we treat it as a sanctuary to preserve, then we reveal ourselves as capable of reverence. If we seek balance, then we admit our flaws but strive for wisdom. Antarctica itself is indifferent. The ice does not care whether we drill or refrain, whether we preserve or destroy, but in how we act we define ourselves. The silence endures. For now, the dilemmas remain unresolved. The ice is still sealed, the lakes are still dark, the anomalies are still hidden. But the day will come when choices must be made, when technology allows us to probe deeper, to excavate, to uncover. And when that day comes, humanity will face the question in full. Do we break the seal, or do we let the silence endure? Antarctica is not only a continent of ice, it is a continent of questions. And perhaps the greatest question it asks us is not scientific, but ethical. Can we resist the hunger to know? Or will we always choose discovery over reverence? Ice is patient. It builds grain by grain, snowflake by snowflake, layer by layer, until entire continents vanish beneath its weight. For millions of years, Antarctica has endured in silence, shrouded in white. But patience does not last forever. Now the ice is melting. This slow unveiling. Every year, satellites measure Antarctica's ice sheets with precision. They see glaciers thinning, ice shelves cracking, water streaming into the sea. The West Antarctic ice sheet, in particular, has been losing mass at an accelerating pace. Gigantic glaciers, Thwaites, Pine Island, Lambert, move like leviathans toward the ocean, their underbellies warmed by rising seas, their surfaces fractured by air. To scientists, this is a crisis of climate. To the world, it is a threat of rising seas. But within the frame of Antarctica's mystery, the melt carries another meaning: revelation. As ice retreats, it uncovers valleys, ridges, and features that have not felt air or light for millions of years. The continent is slowly giving up its secrets, not through drills or treaties, but through the inevitability of change, the paradox of loss and discovery. There is a paradox here. What is a catastrophe for the planet may also be an unveiling of the past. As glaciers pull back, they expose fossil beds, petrified forests, and ancient sediments. Already, researchers have uncovered the remains of temperate rainforests from 90 million years ago, pollen grains preserved in soils that once nourished dinosaurs. Each melt reveals another page in Antarctica's hidden book. The tragedy of the present, the warming seas, the collapsing ecosystems, becomes, at the same time, a revelation of the past. It is a cruel gift, to learn, but at a price. Secrets beneath the ice. What might the melt reveal in centuries to come? Entire valleys preserved since the last warm epoch. Subglacial lakes breached naturally, spilling their ecosystems into the open. Fossilized forests, whole root systems, even animal remains sealed in sediments. Geological scars, craters, ridges, anomalies, made visible as the shroud lifts. And if legend holds truth, perhaps more. The remnants of civilizations swallowed by sudden freeze, their monuments and maps locked away until the thaw. To imagine such discoveries is to feel awe mixed with dread. Awe at what might be revealed. Dread at what will be lost in the process. The timescale of ice. Ice moves on scales larger than human lives. What seems eternal to us, a glacier, a shelf, a frozen plain, is, in geological time, fragile and temporary. Consider this. The Ross Ice Shelf, larger than France, looks immovable, yet it floats, thinning, its edge retreating. The Larsen B ice shelf collapsed in 2002 in just over a month, a slab of ice the size of Luxembourg shattering into the sea. What seems immutable can vanish in a moment. If shelves and glaciers vanish, if the continent continues to warm, Antarctica will not only transform the future but reveal the past. A mirror of our world, the melting of Antarctica is not just a local phenomenon, it is a mirror held up to humanity. It shows us how fragile our planet is, how small shifts in temperature can awaken giants of ice, how decisions made in cities ripple to the ends of the earth. And yet, within that mirror we glimpse something else, the deep memory of the planet. The ice has preserved forests, rivers, even whispers of rain. The melt reminds us that the frozen desert we see today is not eternal. It was once green. It will not always be white. The past and future converge in Antarctica's melt, one revealed, the other threatened. The Great Floods. If the Antarctic ice sheet were to melt entirely, sea levels would rise by nearly 60 meters, drowning coastal cities, reshaping continents. Even partial melts, West Antarctica for instance, could raise seas by several meters, enough to erase islands and flood nations. This spectre haunts modern science, but it also echoes ancient myth. Nearly every culture has a flood story. Waters rising suddenly, swallowing lands, forcing humanity to flee. Could these myths be cultural memories of past ice collapses, when glaciers surged into seas and oceans swallowed coasts? As Antarctica melts today, we may be reliving the origins of those myths, watching the flood not as legend but as news. The vault opening. Some imagine Antarctica as a vault. If so, the melt is the key. Nature itself is turning the lock, slowly lifting the lid. Already, lakes once buried are coming into contact with the ocean. Already, ice streams reveal sediments older than humankind. In centuries to come, if the warming continues, entire basins may emerge. Lands unseen for millions of years, bearing fossils, mysteries, perhaps even artifacts we cannot yet imagine. It is a haunting thought, that the greatest archaeological discovery in history may not come from human exploration, but from planetary collapse. The weight of responsibility. Here lies the greatest ethical burden. To long for Antarctica's secrets is to long, in some sense, for the ice to vanish. But to wish for that is to wish for catastrophe, for drowned cities, displaced millions, ecosystems undone. And so we must learn to hold two truths in tension, that Antarctica's melt is a disaster for the living, that it is also a revelation of the dead. To desire one is to accept the other. The paradox is unbearable. The imagination of tomorrow. What stories will future generations tell if the ice continues to retreat? They may stand on ground where glaciers once towered, holding fossils of forests in their hands. They may find lakes alive with organisms unseen for eons. They may uncover ruins, not of lost civilizations perhaps, but of our own. Bases, stations, traces of our fleeting presence preserved in permafrost. Or perhaps they will inherit only the flood, the loss, the cost of our neglect. Perhaps the secrets will remain locked, drowned not in ice but in sea. Antarctica's future is not fixed. It is a story still being written, and we are its authors. Between hope and fear, there is hope too. Ice is resilient. Even as it melts, it can grow again. Climate can shift back. The vault may remain sealed longer than we fear. If humanity acts with restraint, the great ice sheets may endure, their secrets preserved for another age. But if not, the thaw will come, and with it, revelation and ruin. The final silence. For now, Antarctica remains mostly silent. The ice still covers its mountains, its lakes, its scars. The The pyramids remain ambiguous, the anomalies unresolved, the forests only fossils, but the silence is thinning. Cracks spread across shelves, rivers flow beneath glaciers, valleys emerge where ice retreats. It is as though the continent is stirring from its long slumber, shifting in its frozen bed, beginning to whisper again. What it whispers, we cannot yet know. Perhaps only geology, perhaps only silence, or perhaps, just perhaps, memories of worlds we have forgotten. Antarctica is melting, and as it melts, it becomes not only a threat but a revelation. Not only an ending but a beginning. Not only a disaster but a story. The future of Antarctica is the future of us all. Because when the ice retreats, the world will change, and when the ice retreats, the secrets will rise. There is an archaeology of ruins, where spades strike soil and temples rise from sand. There is an archaeology of oceans, where divers drift among sunken cities. And then there is the archaeology of shadows, places where nothing can be touched, nothing can be seen, only imagined through ice and darkness. Antarctica is the greatest of these shadowlands. For now, it is silent, sealed. But as the ice melts, as instruments grow sharper, as valleys and lakes stir beneath their frozen cover, the question becomes louder. What will be revealed when the shadows give way? Fossils in waiting. Already, Antarctica has given us glimpses of its deep biological memory. Petrified forests rise from the transantarctic mountains, stumps rooted in stone, their rings frozen in time. Pollen grains emerge from sediments, whispering of rainforests that flourished 90 million years ago. But these are only fragments. Beneath the thick ice lie entire basins where no one has yet dug. If the glaciers retreat, they may expose fossil beds of staggering richness. The bones of dinosaurs adapted to polar light and darkness. Ancient amphibians and reptiles from the Permian, their bodies entombed in sediments. Entire ecosystems preserved in subglacial valleys, sealed like terrariums for millions of years. To paleontologists, this is a dream, a chance to trace evolution across eras, to see how life adapted to extremes, to uncover species no one has ever imagined. But to dreamers of legend, these fossils may be more than animals. They may be proof that Antarctica once supported life intelligent enough to shape, to build, to remember. Lost landscapes. What would it feel like to stand in a valley freshly revealed by melting ice? A valley unseen since before humanity existed. Imagine walking across soils that last felt air 30 million years ago. Stones still sharp, rivers carving channels for the first time in eons, fossilized roots protruding from banks, still smelling faintly of earth when split. It would be like stepping into a time machine, a landscape frozen at its death, revived at its birth. Such discoveries are not fantasy. Already, radar surveys show buried valleys as deep as the Grand Canyon, hidden beneath the ice. If exposed, they may hold sediments untouched since the Eocene, bearing not only fossils but the chemical fingerprints of ancient climates. Antarctica is not just an archive of bones, it is an archive of entire worlds. The shadow of civilization. Here the imagination turns darker, bolder. What if the ice reveals not only fossils but ruins? Not only forests but walls? Not only rivers but roads? The legends whisper of civilizations that may have thrived in Antarctica when its climate was temperate. The Piri Reis Map, the pyramid-like peaks, the myths of Atlantis and Lemuria. Each points in its way toward a possibility, that humanity is older than we think, and that Antarctica once held its forgotten chapter. Mainstream science rejects this. Human history, as we know it, does not stretch back to Antarctica's last green age, but the allure of the idea is powerful, because the ice is so absolute, so impenetrable, it feels like the perfect hiding place. And as it melts, the imagination cannot help but ask, what if something is there? Tools, bones, symbols. If a lost civilization did exist, what might survive beneath the ice? Stone structures preserved by sudden freeze, their walls intact though buried for millions of years. Carvings, etched into rock still sharp when uncovered by retreating glaciers. Artifacts, tools of metal or stone sealed in sediments, waiting for human hands to find them again. Bones, not of animals but of people, ancestors or others, preserved like mammoths in Siberia. None of this is proven, but the preservation power of ice gives the imagination permission to wonder. Because in ice, even fragile things endure. The archaeology of shadows. Even without civilizations, Antarctica demands a new kind of archaeology. An archaeology that does not dig but listens, that does not break but waits, that reads shadows, anomalies, echoes. Already, radar acts as a kind of spade, revealing outlines of mountains and valleys. Gravity maps reveal hidden scars. Ice cores read ancient climates in trapped bubbles. This is archaeology without ruins, history without monuments. Yet it is no less haunting, because it reminds us that the past does not vanish. It waits, even when sealed in silence. Echoes of flood and freeze. The myths of humanity are filled with floods, sudden freezes, lands lost in catastrophe. Archaeology in Antarctica may reveal the seeds of these stories. If fossils of tropical forests are found in polar basins, they confirm that the Earth can change violently. If valleys show evidence of sudden glaciation, they echo myths of worlds swallowed overnight. If the ice hides ruins, even if only the ruins of forests, they still resonate with the archetype of a paradise lost. Science uncovers, legend interprets, both stand on the same ground. The role of shadows. Why call it the archaeology of shadows? Because so much of what we see in Antarctica is not direct. It is glimpsed in radar echoes, in faint gravity signatures, in distorted maps. It is suggested, not confirmed. It exists half in evidence, half in imagination. And in that twilight shadows form, shapes that may be mountains or pyramids, coasts that may be South America or Antarctica, anomalies that may be craters or domes. The shadows are real, in data, in ice, in stone, but what they mean remains fluid. And in that fluidity lies their power. The ethics of discovery. If the melt reveals fossils, we will study them. If it reveals ecosystems, we will probe them. If it reveals ruins, natural or otherwise, we will excavate them. But should we? Every discovery changes what it touches. Fossils crumble when exposed. Microbes die when contaminated. Ruins lose their silence once entered. Antarctica's shadows may not survive our light. The archaeology of shadows is also an ethics of restraint. To seek without destroying, to uncover without erasing, to imagine without conquering. Shadows a story. Perhaps this is the truest role of Antarctica's archaeology of shadows, to feed story. Each anomaly becomes a tale, each fossil becomes a whisper, each map, each pyramid, each scar in the ice becomes a symbol of something larger. Our hunger for history, our fear of forgetting, our longing for permanence in a world of change. The ice may melt, the fossils may emerge, the ruins, if they exist, may rise. But even if none of it is as mysterious as we imagine, the stories will remain. And in the end, the stories may be the most enduring discovery of all. The future excavation. Someday explorers will stand where ice once stretched, digging into soils freshly revealed. They will lift fossils of leaves that last touched air 90 million years ago. They will walk across valleys unseen by human eyes. Perhaps they will even stumble upon shapes that make them pause. Walls too straight, stones too aligned, carvings too deliberate. And in that moment, the archaeology of shadows will become the archaeology of light. Until then, we remain in the half-dark, peering through radar and legend, piecing together fragments of what might be. Antarctica is the last great shadow. What it hides may be forests or fossils or civilizations or nothing at all. But the act of wondering, of searching the shadows, is itself an archaeology of the human spirit. Because what we seek in Antarctica is not only its past, but our own. Antarctica is white on the map, but black in imagination. A continent without cities, without nations, without flags. Yet somehow it draws more rumours of secrecy than any other place on Earth. Perhaps it is because of the ice, the silence, the distance. Or perhaps it is because so much of what happens there happens far from our eyes, reported only in fragments, cloaked in official statements. Whatever the reason, Antarctica has become the perfect canvas for conspiracies. Operation High Jump. The most famous of these begins in 1946, when the United States launched Operation High Jump, one of the largest expeditions ever sent to Antarctica. It involved more than 4,000 personnel, dozens of ships and aircraft, and an ambitious plan to explore and establish bases. Officially, it was a scientific and military training mission. But in later decades, whispers began to grow. Why such a vast force, so soon after World War II? Why the sudden urgency to stake presence in the frozen south? Some claim the mission was really a hunt, a search for remnants of secret Nazi bases rumoured to have been built in Antarctica during the war. Others spun tales of strange aerial encounters, of flying discs spotted by pilots, of Admiral Richard Byrd speaking cryptically about enemies that can fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. To historians, these stories are distortions, born of misquotes and exaggeration. But to legend, they are proof of something hidden, that Antarctica's silence is guarded not only by nature, but by secrecy. The Nazi myth. The myth of Nazi Antarctica remains one of the most enduring. During the 1930s, German expeditions did indeed explore Queen Maud Land, mapping the region and naming it Neuschwabenland. They dropped flags from planes, photographed expanses, and even considered building a whaling station. After the war, this small kernel of truth grew into elaborate tales. Rumours spread that the Nazis had built vast underground bases, carved into the ice, where advanced technology was hidden. Submarines supposedly vanished into secret caverns. Experiments, it was said, continued long after Berlin had fallen. To most, these are fantasies. But the myth survives because it touches on archetypes. Hidden fortresses, forbidden technology, the persistence of evil in remote places. And Antarctica, with its inaccessible valleys and endless ice, is the perfect stage. The secrecy of science. Not all secrecy in Antarctica is mythical, much of it is real. Scientific data from the continent is often closely held, managed by international agreements. Certain regions are restricted, certain projects guarded. Satellite images are sometimes blurred, whether for reasons of national security or logistical irrelevance. Even routine research, drilling into subglacial lakes, mapping anomalies, can take on an aura of mystery when information is slow to emerge. To the public, delays look like cover-ups. Silence looks like suppression. And so science, by its cautious nature, fuels conspiracy without intending to. The archive of rumours. Over the decades, Antarctica has accumulated a library of strange claims. That secret military facilities lie beneath the ice, testing weapons or housing artefacts. That world leaders occasionally visit the continent for reasons unpublicised, spiritual, political or hidden. That satellite photos show structures too geometric to be natural, blurred or censored in official releases. That expeditions stumble upon anomalies but retreat in silence, their findings sealed. Most of these claims dissolve under scrutiny, yet they persist because the environment itself invites them. Antarctica is remote, inaccessible, silent. When so few eyes can see, imagination fills the void. The forbidden zone. In conspiracy lore, Antarctica is often described as a forbidden zone, a place where secrets are hidden from ordinary people, guarded by governments, cloaked by treaties. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959, celebrated as a triumph of peace, is sometimes recast in legend as a cover. Not an agreement to preserve the continent, but to conceal what lies beneath it. Why else, whisper the rumours, would the world's nations agree so readily on anything, unless it was to hide a common secret? It is an inversion of truth, but one that feels compelling. The treaty meant to protect becomes in myth a veil of secrecy. UFOs and ancient visitors. Among the stranger tales are those that link Antarctica to extraterrestrials. Stories circulate of crashed ships buried in ice, of saucer-shaped depressions spotted by satellites, of governments retrieving alien technology from beneath glaciers. These stories blur into others, the Nazi myths, the Operation High Jump rumours, until Antarctica becomes a nexus of every forbidden narrative. Aliens, lost civilizations, hidden technologies, government cover-ups. To skeptics, it is absurd. To believers, the very absurdity is proof. After all, what better place to hide such things than beneath miles of ice in a land few will ever see? Between secrecy and silence, what is striking is how little it takes to create conspiracy in Antarctica. A blurred satellite photo, a delayed report, a scientist's cryptic remark, a military convoy spotted where none is expected. The silence of the continent magnifies everything. What would be trivial elsewhere becomes in Antarctica monumental. A shape in the snow becomes a pyramid. A scar on a gravity map becomes a dome. A treaty becomes a cover-up. In this way, the continent itself conspires with imagination. Its silence becomes a co-author of conspiracy. The power of hiddenness. Why do we hunger so much for secrets beneath Antarctica? Perhaps because hiddenness itself is a kind of power. What is unseen feels greater than what is known. A mystery feels larger than a fact. Antarctica, unseen by almost all, becomes the greatest mystery of all. In this sense, it does not matter whether there are truly archives of forbidden knowledge beneath the ice. The belief that there could be is enough to shape stories, to stir imaginations, to keep alive the idea that the world still holds secrets. The shadow archive, and so Antarctica becomes a kind of shadow archive, Not a literal library, but a collection of human fears and longings projected onto its surface. Fear of lost civilizations erased by catastrophe, longing for contact with knowledge beyond our own, suspicion of governments and powers that might hide truths from us, hope that history is not complete, that something extraordinary remains to be discovered. The ice reflects all of this back to us, not because it holds it, though perhaps it does, but because its silence allows us to imagine it. The dilemma of truth. If the secrets of Antarctica were revealed tomorrow, if every anomaly were explained, every map corrected, every fossil catalogued, would we be satisfied? Or would the loss of mystery feel like a wound? Perhaps part of us does not want the truth, but the mystery. Perhaps the forbidden archive is not beneath the ice, but within us. The part of the human spirit that needs stories of hidden knowledge, that needs to believe there are still secrets left to find. Between light and shadow, Antarctica remains what it has always been, a land of shadows, a land where science and secrecy, myth and memory, truth and imagination all converge. Its real secrets, fossils, valleys, lakes, ice cores, are enough to humble us. Its imagined secrets, civilizations, archives, alien ships, are enough to haunt us. Together, they form a whole, a continent that refuses to be ordinary. Antarctica is white on the map, but in our minds it is black, a vault of forbidden archives sealed beneath ice. And perhaps that is why it matters, not because we know what is hidden, but because we do not. Because in a world where every horizon feels conquered, Antarctica still whispers that something remains unknown. Every age has its frontier. For the ancient world, it was the ocean beyond the Pillars of Hercules. For the medieval mind, it was the blank spaces on parchment marked terra incognita. For the modern age, it was the poles and the stars. But now, in an era where satellites trace every mountain and drones cross every sea, only one place remains that feels truly untouched: Antarctica. The last continent, the edge of maps. Cartographers once filled their ignorance with monsters, dragons coiled in empty seas, serpents slithered across coastlines. The unknown was never left blank. It was populated with fears, dreams, and possibilities. Antarctica has inherited this role. Even on modern maps, it feels more concept than place. A vast smear of white, unmarked by cities or roads, more abstraction than geography. To look at a globe is to see every continent textured, coloured, detailed, except Antarctica, which remains a blank canvas of ice. And so it is not just the southernmost land, it is the edge of the known, the place where maps still hesitate. The archetype of the end. Antarctica embodies the archetype of the end of the world. Geographically, it sits at the bottom of our planet, the final point before nothing but ocean and sky. The end of knowledge. It holds mysteries still sealed, data incomplete, anomalies unexplained. The end of life. Its landscapes are hostile to nearly all, a place where survival itself feels miraculous. The end of time. Its ice cores stretch back millions of years, holding climate and memory far beyond human history. To journey there is to journey into endings. And yet, paradoxically, endings are also beginnings. The end of land becomes the beginning of sea. The end of knowledge becomes the beginning of imagination. The end of time becomes the beginning of memory. Antarctica is not just the last continent, it is the continent of thresholds. Silence as symbol. In a noisy world, Antarctica's silence has symbolic weight. Its landscapes are devoid of human voices. Its horizons are unbroken by skyscrapers or highways. Its nights are vast, its days blinding. To stand there is to feel stripped of all distraction, reduced to essence. This silence becomes more than absence. It becomes archetype, the symbol of ultimate purity, of what is untouched, of what is beyond. In literature and myth, silence often marks the sacred. Temples are quiet, tombs are silent. Antarctica too carries that aura. To some, it is a temple of ice. To others, a tomb. To all, it is a place where the ordinary falls away, leaving only the eternal. The continent of memory. Antarctica is paradoxical. It feels timeless, yet it is a time machine. Its ice preserves memory better than any library. Each layer is a page, written in snowflakes, compressed into record. Scientists drill cores and read them as books. Oxygen isotopes telling of past climates. Trapped bubbles speaking of ancient atmospheres. Layers of dust marking volcanic eruptions. In this way, Antarctica becomes the memory of Earth itself. No other place holds such continuity. It is the continent that remembers what the rest of the world forgets. To myth, this makes it more than a place, it makes it an oracle. The continent of forgetting. But if Antarctica remembers, it also erases. No ancient people have left their ruins there, or if they did, the ice has swallowed them. No forests stand. Only their petrified ghosts remain. No rivers flow freely. They creep beneath kilometres of ice, unseen. Antarctica is the continent that forgets. It buries, it silences. To archetype, it is both archive and abyss, both library and grave, both memory and amnesia. This duality is why it grips us. It reflects our own fear of forgetting, our own hunger to remember. The white stage. Psychologists say white is not the absence of colour, but the blending of all colours. Antarctica, in its endless whiteness, becomes a stage where every imagination can project its own story. For scientists, it is a stage for climate models, drilling rigs, ice charts. For conspiracists, it is a stage for secret archives, hidden bases, alien ships. For mystics, it is a stage for the spiritual, the sacred, the forbidden. Its very emptiness is what makes it powerful. Like a blank page, it begs to be written upon. Like silence, it begs to be filled. Antarctica is the canvas of the collective unconscious, the continent of extremes. Every archetype thrives on extremes, and Antarctica provides them in abundance. The coldest, temperatures plunge below 80 Celsius, colder than dry ice, colder than most of Mars. The highest, with an average elevation of 2,500 metres, Antarctica is the loftiest continent. The dreariest, its interior is a desert with less precipitation than the Sahara. The windiest, katabatic winds scream down from the polar plateau at hurricane speeds. Extremes sharpen archetypes. They make Antarctica not just another land, but the land of the ultimate. The coldest, the highest, the driest, the windiest. The last continent is the land of last things. A mirror for humanity. Archetypes are not just symbols of the external world, they are mirrors of ourselves. Antarctica reflects back the questions humanity most fears to ask. What remains unknown when everything seems known? What is preserved when everything else is erased? What secrets are hidden not in the future but in the past? And what do we risk destroying by seeking too much? The last continent is the last mirror, the one that shows us not only what is hidden beneath ice, but what is hidden within us. Pilgrimage to the end. There is a reason that those who travel to Antarctica often describe it as a spiritual experience. The silence, the whiteness, the vastness create a sense of pilgrimage. To stand at the bottom of the world is to confront both emptiness and enormity. It is a place of testing, of stripping away. Explorers who cross its plateaus often describe hallucinations, feelings of transcendence, encounters with the sublime. The continent seems designed to dissolve ego, to remind us of scale. As archetype, it is the desert, the wilderness, the mountaintop, all the places where humanity goes to encounter what is larger than itself. The last frontier, in a world where outer space is the new frontier, Antarctica remains Earth's own. It is the last place where the unknown is not above us, but beneath us, where the mysteries are not stars away, but hidden in our own soil. This makes it more than a frontier. It makes it a reminder that the unknown is not gone. It is here, waiting beneath the white. For myth, this is essential, because myth withers when all is known. Antarctica sustains myth by sustaining mystery. The archetype of return. Finally, Antarctica embodies the archetype of return. For millions of years it was green, alive with forests. Then it froze. Now it melts again. The cycle turns. The land that was lost begins to emerge. It reminds us that nothing is fixed, that endings are beginnings, that what was forgotten may be remembered, that the last continent may yet become the first again. The first to teach us humility, the first to reveal what was hidden, the first to show us what it means to confront the unknown with reverence. Antarctica is geography, but it is also dream. It is ice, but it is also symbol. It is the last continent, not because it is far, but because it represents the end of what we know, the threshold of what we imagine. And in that threshold lies its power. Some places give answers, Antarctica does not. It gives silence, and in that silence questions bloom like frost. The first question, what lies beneath? Perhaps the simplest and the most haunting, what is under the ice? Science tells us mountains, valleys, lakes, sediments, fossils. Radar shows us ridges and scars. Gravity maps reveal hidden basins. Ice cores speak of climates past. But imagination adds its own answers. Pyramids, vaults, cities, civilizations. Perhaps even something stranger. Knowledge older than humanity itself. preserved by accident or by design? The question remains not because we lack instruments, but because the veil is so thick. The ice hides everything but outlines, and outlines are fertile ground for both science and myth. The second question, how fast did it freeze? Did Antarctica's transformation take millions of years? Slow, relentless, inevitable? Or were parts of it buried in a sudden cataclysm, frozen in a geological instant? If it was sudden, what might have been caught in that moment? Forests mid-bloom, rivers mid-flow, creatures mid-step, whole landscapes preserved like Pompeii, not by ash but by ice. And if legends are true, perhaps more than landscapes, perhaps people, perhaps cities, perhaps stories too fragile for time, saved only by sudden cold. Science leans towards slowness, but even it admits to abrupt shifts, feedback loops, tipping points, moments where change cascades faster than expected. The ice remembers those shifts, but whether they froze forests or civilizations, we cannot yet know. The third question, what do the maps mean? The Piri Reis Map with its strange southern coasts, the Orontius Phineas Map of 1531, depicting an oddly ice-free Antarctica, other fragments, half forgotten, that seem to hint at knowledge long before discovery. Are they distortions, errors of scale, misreadings of South America? Or are they echoes of older charts, handed down from a time when the continent's shores were visible? If they are errors, they remind us of the human hunger to draw what is unknown. If they are true, they suggest an unsettling possibility that someone long ago mapped what should have been hidden. The question lingers not in ink but in interpretation. The fourth question, are the pyramids only mountains? The nunataks rise like sentinels, their sides unnaturally even, their peaks uncannily sharp. Geology says they are pyramidal peaks, shaped by ice and time, no different from the Matterhorn. Yet we look and we see design, we see geometry, we see intention. Is this pareidolia, the human mind seeing pattern in chance? Or is it instinct, whispering that form has meaning? Even if they are only mountains, why do they resemble what we build? Why does nature echo culture so perfectly? Is it coincidence? Or is the pyramid itself an archetype written into stone as well as spirit? The mountains give no answer. They simply stand, patient, indifferent, waiting for us to decide what we see. The fifth question, are we alone in the ice? The microbes of Lake Vostok, sealed for 15 million years, show us that life endures in darkness. They remind us that ecosystems can survive without sun, without air, in isolation. What else might endure? What else might have adapted? To science, the answer may be exotic bacteria, strange extremophils, new branches of the tree of life. To legend, the answer could be stranger still, remnants of civilizations, visitors from elsewhere, guardians of knowledge preserved in vaults. The ice does not confirm or deny, it only keeps its silence. The sixth question, should we even know? This may be the most profound question of all. Even if we can uncover Antarctica's secrets, should we? To drill is to contaminate, to thaw is to destroy, to unseal is to end the purity of silence. Perhaps Antarctica is meant to remain closed, a vault not for us to open, but to remind us that not everything must be known. Perhaps ignorance, in this case, is wisdom. But curiosity burns, and history shows we rarely resist for long. The hunger to know is as deep as the ice itself. The seventh question, why do myths converge here? From Atlantis to Lemuria, from flood myths to tales of sudden freeze, from conspiracies of hidden bases to whispers of alien ships, somehow all converge on Antarctica. Why here? Why this continent more than any other? Perhaps because it is so hidden, so blank, so silent, a perfect mirror for our longings and fears. We project onto it what we most desire, proof of forgotten ages, confirmation of myths, validation of wonder. Or perhaps, the myths remember something. A real catastrophe, long forgotten by history, echoing faintly in story, in map, in legend. The question will not leave us. The eighth question, what future does it hold? Antarctica is melting. Its secrets will not stay buried forever. Will it reveal fossils, forests, valleys, reminders of life long gone? Or ruins, archives, relics, reminders of life long forgotten? Or will it reveal nothing at all, only silence, only stone, only ice? Whatever emerges, it will not only reshape our science, it will reshape our story. Because Antarctica is not just a continent, it is a chapter of human imagination, and when its veil lifts, the story will change forever. The ninth question, what does it mean for us? The greatest question is not about Antarctica itself, but about us. Why does this place captivate us so deeply? Perhaps because it holds a mirror to our own condition. We too are sealed in time, fragile against catastrophe, haunted by forgetting. We too long for permanence in a world of change. We too wonder if we are the first, or merely one of many civilizations risen and erased. Antarctica's silence is our silence. Its ice is our memory. Its questions are our questions. The archetype of the question. In the end, perhaps Antarctica's greatest role is not to provide answers, but to embody the archetype of the question itself. It is the continent that asks but does not tell, that reveals but does not explain, that mirrors but does not resolve. And perhaps this is what we need. Not finality, but mystery. Not certainty, but wonder. Not answers, but the questions that keep us awake at night, staring into the dark, listening for whispers in the silence. The last silence. When we imagine Antarctica in the future, whether melting or enduring, we know the questions will remain. Even if we find fossils, ruins, maps, or microbes, there will still be another what if waiting beyond. Because mystery is infinite, and the last continent is endless enough to hold it, so the ice continues to whisper, not with answers, but with questions. And sometimes, questions are enough. There are places that tell us who we are. Cities with their noise and lights show us our ambition. Ruins with their broken stones show us our fragility. Oceans with their endless horizons show us our longing. And then there is Antarctica, the last continent, which shows us something else entirely, the mirror of eternity. The mirror of ice. When you look into a mirror, you see yourself. But when you look into Antarctica, you see time itself. The ice reflects the Earth's memory. Forests that flourished 90 million years ago. Rivers that once carved green valleys. Dinosaurs that grazed where glaciers now tower. Its cores preserve the breath of ancient atmospheres. Bubbles of air inhaled and exhaled by worlds long vanished. Its fossils preserve the shapes of trees and leaves once soft and alive, now etched in stone. But the ice also reflects us. Our fears, our myths, our hunger for secrets. We see pyramids in mountains, Atlantis in maps, vaults in anomalies, civilizations in shadows. The ice gives nothing away, but in its silence it allows us to project everything. In this way, Antarctica becomes more than a continent. It becomes a mirror, not just of Earth, but of ourselves. The mirror of myths. Legends from across the world converge here, as if drawn by gravity. The flood myths of Mesopotamia, echoing the fear of waters rising as glaciers melt. The tale of Atlantis, swallowed by catastrophe, reborn in whispers of Antarctic ruins. The Norse Fimbul winter, a great freeze before the end of days reflected in Antarctica's eternal ice. The maps of Piri Reis and Orontius Phineas, suggesting knowledge that should not exist, fragments of a forgotten cartography. Whether true or false, these myths live in Antarctica because it has space for them. It is blank enough, silent enough, immense enough to hold all our stories without contradiction. It does not argue, it does not deny, it simply reflects. The mirror of science. Science, too, sees itself reflected in Antarctica. For geologists, it is a record of tectonics, a frozen book of Earth's shifting crust. For climatologists, it is the archive of atmosphere, a warning system for the planet's future. For biologists, it is a laboratory of extremophiles, showing how life adapts to darkness and cold. For astronomers, it is a mirror of other worlds, a preview of what Europa or Enceladus might hold beneath their ice. Each discipline sees in Antarctica what it seeks. Each uses the ice as a tool, a key, a lens, and yet, despite all their instruments, they too admit how much remains unknown. In that unknowing, science becomes closer to myth than it realizes. Both ask questions, both gaze into the same mirror, the mirror of silence. But perhaps the truest reflection Antarctica offers is silence. In the desert interior, winds scream, yet the silence beneath them is deeper still. There are no birds, no leaves, no rivers to break the stillness. Only the sound of one's own breath, magnified against emptiness. This silence is not emptiness, it is presence, the silence of temples, the silence of tombs, the silence that demands reverence. When explorers and scientists describe their first moments alone on the ice, they often speak of awe. Some call it spiritual, some call it terrifying, some cannot describe it at all. Because the silence is not absence, it is a mirror that reflects back the listener's own soul. The eternal mirror, Why call it eternal? Because Antarctica is older than our species and it will outlast us. Civilizations rise and fall, but the ice endures. Empires carve their histories, but the glaciers ignore them. Even our modern technologies, our satellites and drills, our whispers of conspiracy and dreams of discovery, are temporary. The ice has seen warmer ages, it has seen forests, it has seen seas, it has seen no humans at all, it has seen everything, and it has forgotten nothing. When we are gone, the ice will remain, shifting slowly, recording the breath of the atmosphere long after our last words have faded. Antarctica is eternal, not because it never changes, but because it remembers all change. Lessons from the mirror. What does this mirror teach us? Perhaps 3 things. That we are fragile. The ice remembers extinctions. It remembers climates that shifted suddenly, catastrophes that erased life. It reminds us that we too are vulnerable, that permanence is illusion, that we're curious. Even in silence we ask, even in shadow we imagine. Antarctica reflects our hunger for knowledge, our refusal to stop wondering even when answers are denied. That mystery is necessary. Not all questions must be answered. Sometimes the value lies in the asking itself. Antarctica teaches us that the unknown is not failure, but nourishment. Mystery keeps us human. Between ending and beginning, in this long journey, from ice cores to pyramids, from fossils to myths, from secrecy to silence, we return to where we began, a continent that feels less like a place and more like a question. Antarctica is the ending of maps, the ending of forests, the ending of warmth. But it is also the beginning of wonder, the beginning of story, the beginning of a reminder that the world is larger than we think. The mirror does not show us endings or beginnings alone, it shows us both, entwined, inseparable. The last image. Picture this. A traveller stands on the Antarctic plateau at twilight. The sky is painted in colours the eye cannot quite name. Purple, silver, fire, ash. The ice stretches endlessly, smooth and absolute, reflecting the sky like a sea frozen in mid-breath. There are no sounds, only silence. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your heartbeat, your breath, the blood moving in your veins. In that silence, the traveller feels not small but infinite, as though they are looking into a mirror that reflects not their face but the entire story of Earth. Past, present, future. Life, death, memory, forgetting, all shimmering in the ice. That is Antarctica, the eternal mirror. Closing the circle, we began with a question. Could Antarctica hold evidence of lost empires? We end not with an answer, but with another question. What does Antarctica hold of us? Perhaps one day the ice will reveal ruins, fossils, secrets. Perhaps not. Perhaps the greatest secret is not what lies beneath, but what it reflects back into us. The hunger to know, the need to wonder, the acceptance that mystery itself is sacred. Antarctica does not give answers. It gives something rarer, a mirror that reminds us who we are, and in that reflection lies eternity.